AMCO enforcement is noticing that after marijuana is sent to a marijuana product concentrate facility, the marijuana product concentrate facility will create a product from their approved products list, rename the product under the cultivation facility or strain, repackage a product in a different colored package using the logo from the cultivation and adding the labels set out in 565 and 570. For example, if you have cultivator, man, I'm trying to make one up. I think everybody has taken any name that would come right to my mind. Let's say Sweet Leaf. Okay, only the Black Sabbath, all right? So Sweet Leaf is a cultivation, and they go and they have, or I'm sorry, Sweet Leaf is a cultivator, and Aussie's is the product manufacturer, and there is a product box that has a logo or a picture pertaining to Aussie's that you guys approved, but they contract out to Sweet Leaf. That Sweet Leaf has a separate logo and a highly well-known strain, and they're using that strain specifically to make the product in one of Aussie's products or something. But and when they do that, they are changing the approved packaging from the Marijuana Control Board to reflect and make it look, or it does look, it gives the appearance that it's made, the product that is made by Aussie's is actually made by Sweet Leaf. So, going over that, the reason I bring this to your attention is it causes a lot of confusion, not only in repackaging, but naming the product that was approved by the board. It almost looks as though the cultivation is the one packaging the products. Can manufacturing licenses change the overall look of their approved product packaging if they are in compliance with 56570, or do they need to adhere to the approved packaging as submitted to the board in 523C?
Sure. Thanks. I looked at this and I read the regulations, and then I thought back to the many products that we have approved. And actually, product manufacturing is the one product where we generally get a more clear understanding of the label than any other. We'll get a pencil drawing from a cultivator, this will what'll be on the 5-pound package I ship out, kind of thing. And so I thought about this, and I am not convinced that when I approve a product, I am approving that exact label. Because oftentimes when I go through a whole list, it's the exact same label on every product. Sometimes they don't even change the name, and they say, this is the potential label. This is the general label that we're going to do. And so I don't know that when I approve a product, I'm saying it's this label, it has to be blue in color and green, and it has to have this nomenclature on it. At times we have said you need to add something to this particular product that contains alcohol, contains nuts, or things like that, or we've said there's an ingredient list. I don't know that we have ever, to the point of requiring a change, approved a label that closely. I was also thinking about, I go in the store, and I buy a particular product, and all of a sudden I can't find it on the store because the manufacturer changed the label. And I was looking for a green one, and this is a white one. And the grocery store put it on a different shelf. So I don't know what I feel about this in terms of that. But on one hand, I think if both the manufacturer and the cultivator are listed on the label, You know, I'm the manufacturer, the cultivator grew it. The discussion, if I sell a 5-pound bulk of flour to a retailer, you know, then they're gonna package it and it's gonna have their retail on it. But if a cultivator packages it for resale without repackaging, then it's sold by the retailer, but it's specifically, theoretically labeled as coming from the cultivator. Manufacturer's sort of in the mix. So I gave this a lot of thought, and my reaction is, I'm not sure it's a problem that the board could fix unless we looked at changing how we approve the labels and the products. And if we did, I would think we would need to take a bigger look at the exact labels that cultivators do, which we don't require, or at least that's not in the applications. Or we would want to know from a retailer, when you get bulk, we want to approve your label, and we don't do that. So at this point, I'm going to lean toward the side of, I don't think it's a big deal. If it is, then we need to start a regulation process, because we need to be a lot clearer when we approve a label and how it can be changed. We need to deal with all levels of licensees on that.
Yeah, I guess the big confusion would be if I go and buy a marijuana product, you're talking about anything from a edible to shatter, right? And I can see why, particularly with concentrates, you'd want to be strain specific. You know, the thing that I guess the cultivator has to keep in mind is they don't want the label to imply too broadly that they're the ones that made it, because they're not a manufacturer. So somewhere on there it's got to say manufactured by, you know, and then it'll say, you know, the name and the strain. And yeah, you know, packaging, label, packaging colors and all that, I mean, it's commerce, you know. I mean, you buy a box of cereal at the store and it's got a big stamp that says new look, same taste, you know. So but we don't want, you know, customers to be confused who's making it. We don't want you to be confused who's making it. We don't want, you know, the cultivator, if he's real proud of his stuff and the manufacturer is real proud of what they're growing and they want to put the name on it, grown by, you know, James's greenhouse, but it's still got to say that it was manufactured by Mark.
Mr. Chair, sorry. I just want to respond to Mr. Jones' comments. The board did open a packaging, a packaging and labeling regulations project at the last meeting. So I think there's an opportunity to work through some of these thoughts and concepts and decide where you want to head. Not that Mr. Hulscher doesn't need guidance today, but sort of where you want to head with this. And one of the, we don't have a draft for you today, but one of the things that we had talked about was providing, you know, best practices of packaging and labeling from other states. So we will be looking at that. One of the things that Mr. Hulscher talked about, not just changing the label, but also different packaging. And I think the packaging is specifically approved by the board. So I think that's a little bit different than just the label, because the application says sample label, and I think consistent with what Mr. Jones said, you have been looking at the sample label and approving the sample label, but that doesn't mean that's the exact label as long as it meets the requirements. But the packaging is much different, because you'll often require, you know, a child-proof cap or a this or that or the other.
And I think, if I might, Mr. Chair, the other part of that is we sometimes don't approve a package, and then we make them come back. That's part of the delegation. And I see at times when, you know, they come in a little clear jar with the cap on it, or the shape of a syringe changes, but it's still a syringe. I know that we require a photograph of the product. So even if the product is the same and exact same ingredients, and they change one aspect and it suddenly, instead of being golden brown, is purple pink, you know, we're going to get a picture of it, right? Eventually.
In theory, and I think that's what brought about this conversation.
And so one thing we might wanna look at is once, manufacturer has a label for a product, we get a picture of the product and the label. But I think a regulation project is better. But like I said, in terms of current guidance that I would support today is, let's work this through the process and not try to do anything precipitous today or sort of change. And I know that, you know, that puts a little bit more burden on enforcement to be a little bit, more flexible in some ways. But, you know, I do think that, we need to work this through.
Yeah, and part of that, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we get to regulations, but this is the sort of technical issue. It's more a technical issue than it is really a health and safety issue. You know, I mean, I can see how you would argue that it would be, but it's more of it's an industry-driven thing that's going on. It's a commerce-driven thing that's going on. They're not doing this, I don't think, to fake anybody out. It's just that, you know, I mean, you can disagree with that, but what I want to say is...
No, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I don't want that out there that I disagree. I actually agree that isn't the intention. I don't think they're trying to dupe us into thinking that a cultivator is making the product. The problem comes in when we have outside public health, schools, concerned parents, or otherwise that are reporting to enforcement the look of a box or describing a look of a box when we have not received an updated photo. So that's where this concern comes into play, because if I have somebody say, hey, Greatland Ganja is making some gummy bears or something, which I know there's no gummy bears, yeah, but they're not. But that's the kind of statements that we may get. And when we ask them to describe products or describe the packaging or send us photos, they aren't matching with what's been submitted to us. So that's where this is born from. And it's not enforcement's idea that we have licensees out there trying to trick anybody. And we understand from the beginning that this was just an example that they were giving. I mean, geez, if we thought from the beginning that some of the products, the pictures that were submitted early on were what we were going to actually see, I think this industry would be in a pretty bad place right now. But
Yeah, so what my point was getting to is that when we have, an industry-driven thing, business strategy thing that's causing some, I'll just call it soft conflict with the regulations, your point is excellent, because somebody could call up and say, well, I've got this package here that comes from a licensed establishment, but, you know, I've gone on your website and I don't see a picture of it, you look and you don't see a picture of it. So this is kind of the sort of issue that, rather than maybe jump immediately into a regulations project, which we could, let's take a little breathing space and get a little bit more input from the industry through the marijuana mailbox. If a regulation like this is not on the agenda at the next meeting for public comment, you know, let's get some input. People might say, yeah, we didn't realize that this is causing a problem, so maybe we're going to quit doing that, or yeah, we wouldn't necessarily oppose a regulation that says any packaging change must be reported within 24 hours, you know, to the board to add to the list. So, okay, so that's all I got to say about it.
Could I make one comment? And I think it's more of a comment/statement, maybe question. If we're having problems identifying the products because maybe the packaging colors and things have changed, after the product is approved, could the office assign a product number to it and have it put on the labels, and that way you can just look at the number and say, this is the approved product?
The board has
know.
discussed a discrete product number, and we all think that's a great idea. We just haven't managed to get there yet.
Maybe the confusion, right? Instead of somebody trying to describe a box over the phone, just give me the number.
absolutely.
You know? So, all right.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Moving on, something that wasn't in my report, and I was pretty pressed last week. We had an administrative hearing last week, and I unfortunately did the human thing and waited till the last minute to write my report, and realized I didn't have enough time to put everything in there that I wanted to. So we had a question. I know our advertisement regulations contemplate newspaper, radio, and one individual is asking about online quote-unquote video or television ads. And I know the regulation states that they must make assurance that the audience is over 21. And I don't know how, if somebody went to, I don't know, ADN and ADN.com and saw that there was a pop-up that had because somebody might say, hey, the majority of ADN subscribers are over 21, and right click on that, a pop-up comes up for a marijuana establishment. What stopgap is there, or is that something that the board has anticipated with this over 21 viewing audience? While our advertisement regulation is very thorough, it does leave out quite a bit of things to include television and video and other things like that. And it doesn't define web-based versus antenna or dish or digital media, anything else like that. And I know what you're going to pull out. We're already aware of that. So this is a little different. That's a newspaper print, but the same thing applies to that. And with even more so concerning about a newspaper ad is, where does that land? Does that land within 1,000 feet of a child care facility? Those are questions that I've asked in the past. So I think that it's quickly becoming to that point where these things need to be addressed by action or by clear guidance from the board to the licensees regarding advertisements. So my question is, do you guys think web-based videos would require something that says that the audience of the website that they are utilizing, the audience is majority over 21?
Plenty of video on the internet that you ought to be over 21 to watch, and it doesn't ask whether you are or not, so.
And I don't regulate them.
There's no way to, even suggest that, in good faith, you would say that somebody's only people over 21 are gonna be viewing an online ad, whether it's a pop-up or whether it's a video or what the heck it is. That's just fact of life.
Then that begs the question, why even have that as an option if you know it's gonna be abused? I mean, I understand that, and as a father of 6, I completely understand what's out there, what can be viewed, what can be seen, but they are not, a lot of times, state-regulated entities, and if they are subject to the laws of the state regulatory authority. So that's what my question stems from, and we are getting a lot of questions that regulations don't seem to cover, or they cover very unclear, very little, they touch on just a little. And I am uncomfortable because of the accusations or insinuations that enforcement makes our own interpretation of the laws and applies them to how we want to enforce. That could be the furthest thing from the truth, because as record shows, I consistently not only seek guidance from the board, but I do so from our director and our attorney. So this is one of those cases where I just want to make that clear that we are seeking some guidance to this. Because I do have to answer these questions, whether you guys say, give me a recommendation or not.
Yeah, and that again, that gets into we could probably spend several 8-hour days hearing about the regulation of commerce, and then a few more days about the enforcement of the regulation of commerce. And that's what this is. It's a competitive industry. Everybody's looking for an angle. They're like, well, nobody's advertising this way, I should try. And that does put you and your staff and the director in a pretty tight spot. And then you come to us and put us into that tight spot, saying, what should we do? So, again, we're at a point now, I think, where we're going to see some evolution of regulations to meet some of industry growth and to continue to you know, take care of our responsibilities to the people of the state. So,
Mr. Chair?
yes.
You know, there's always ways to disincentivize particular advertising, and if it's a video, if it's a pop-up ad, you know, there are some online programs that show a lot of video that make you become a subscriber to see certain content. There are others that say, in order to view this, you have to be over 18. I certify I'm over 18. Well, I think if we were to say something like, take a regulatory process, that if they were going to do that, first thing that a person sees is, are you over 21? Certify to us that you're over 21. First of all, that's just a flag to everybody under 21. I want to go look. But at the same time, it may be for an ADM. It may be for another web-based program to say, I don't want to mess with that because I don't want them to think I'm only an adult only. And so they will turn down the advertising. You know, they will forego the revenue because it's a hassle to have that pop up. You know, that's one thought that I had in terms of dealing with the online and who can access it. You know, that's why, as a parent, you're probably always warned, you know, follow what your kids do on the internet. Put the blocks in so that, you know, there are certain places they can't go unless they, you know, have signed in on a PIN or whatever. But, you know, you're never going to stop all of it, or as long as it's online. So, you know, that's just the first thought that came to my mind, is you put in something that requires somebody to self-certify that they're over a certain age. That may discourage some advertisers from accepting that advertising. But that may be about the best we're going to be able to do.
Thank you.
Go right ahead.
So moving on, after Lauren made the comment earlier that liars use statistics. You know, I've heard that plenty of times before. You know, a lot of people wonder where that's derived from. There's a few places that you can attribute that to. I want to be very clear and make the record clear that it was a part of my job that I report statistics, and it was actually a request from the alcohol board that I make the graph in the back that's easily understood. You will rarely hear me say, because of these statistics, I believe. I'm just reporting to you guys numbers. And you know what? There's also a counter saying to that, is statistics don't lie, but liars use statistics. So, you guys can clearly see the numbers here. I don't exaggerate my numbers. I don't have the ability to. There are some where I wish I had higher numbers. There's some that I get a little embarrassed by looking at and seeing, but a lot of that is my control. It feels like it is within my control, or it should be, but believe it or not, it is out of my control. And you know, I'll kind of lead that into, we talked a lot about absent in arms earlier. I just wanted to give my brief thoughts on that. My intention with this is not to berate or to talk poorly of another department or another commissioner, because I firmly believe that we're able to work with anybody to get the mission accomplished. And I want to make it very clear with the board, with AMCO office, with public health, with the Department of Public Safety, from my opinion, we have very similar or identical goals. And I want to reiterate that AMCO investigators, every single one of you, every single board member, not only marijuana board, but alcohol board, who each one of you has been vetted through the legislature, been confirmed, just like a commission, has voted to give enforcement powers to each one of us. I realize the Title IV and the Title 17 statutes say with the concurrence of the Commissioner of Public Safety, but everything after that says the board shall, the board will, the board can. With that, it has never been clear that what the concurrence is. Over the past 3 or 4 Commissioners of Public Safety, it has been different. It has been that of a letter, a blanket letter, saying if they meet these requirements, then they have our concurrence. Up until MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding, was drafted that says, you guys will get your concurrence after you go and get special commissions. Special commissions under statute are for a very specific thing. They're to aid the Alaska State Troopers in the enforcement of the law. Other departments within the state of Alaska, to include Department of Health, Department of Labor, all receive special commissions. But they identify the special commissions within their statutes, their respective statutes. Our regulations and statutes do not address special commissions at all. They only address the concurrence of the Commissioner of Public Safety. I will say this adds confusion when they say the Memorandum of Understanding says that we have to receive special commissions, and those special commissions are approved by a separate board that is not only comprised of the Department of Public Safety Commissioner, but we don't know who the other people are on that commission or that committee or board. All I know is when we submit our special commission applications, we're required to put our training and our certifications. As far as I'm concerned, unless there's any other outlying concerns, like APSC getting ready to pull our police certifications or otherwise, there should not be a legitimate reason to deny alcohol and marijuana control investigators special commissions. That's my opinion on that. As you can see, this is it's been burning. It's been something in the back of my head for quite some time now, because this has caused some serious issues and questions. In particular, you have 4 investigators who have special commissions that expire the end of May, the end of this month, which we were told that they are vetting how special commissions are issued. So what does that mean? I received a separate concurrence letter from the Commissioner of Public Safety at the time I was hired. Then I received a special commission from that commissioner, then the following commissioner, and I am on my 3rd one. This is where it would be issued for the 3rd time. And I'm curious as to why I would pass and it would be applicable for the first 2 times, not only myself, but the other investigators, but now somehow it is unwarranted that we receive those. Where does that leave us? What legal area does that leave us? Because we're not required, from my reading of statutes, and again, I'm not an attorney. You know, I understand that statutes are there and regulations are to define statutes, and I think, in my opinion, it is very clear that we are peace officers within both. But what I do see is that there is not a requirement to have a special commission, only the concurrence. So I can go on quite a bit. There's so much more that covers this issue that I think the board understands that this is a very complicated issue. But what it boils down to is you have enforcement who is required to enforce Title IV and Title 17, and we have been hamstrung on almost every level of the way to do that such thing. We are not, we're expected and we're asked to enforce 1171, the misconduct involving controlled substance. This is something that I brought to you guys' attention numerous times over the years. I knew licensees would say, hey, you guys need to get rid of the black market or try your best to do something with the black market, because no offense to what's going on, but there is just not a big drive to go after people who are manufacturing marijuana products for sale with any other law enforcement agency. With that being said, AMCO enforcement for years has been looking at researching and looking at these people who are non-licensing, going out there and taking money from licensees who are regulated by the state. And we have all the intentions in the world to go and make a case so we can bring them back before the board or bring them in front of a judge to answer for the crimes that they're committing. I also feel that way with alcohol and bootleggers and everything else. You guys know with the rewrite of title, or Senate Bill 51, or 52? 52, which has been before the legislature the past 4 years. It's been worked on since I started on the subcommittee back in 2012, I believe. We're pushing 10 years on this rewrite where it's not coming to fruition, and if you guys don't know, most alcohol violations under statute are Class A misdemeanors. I bring our notice of violations for server education and so forth back to the alcohol board for review when, by statute, we could be charging people with Class A misdemeanors. So enforcement is kind of stuck at this point where we've had previous direction, not from our current director, that we will not criminally charge people because prosecutors will not take these cases unless it is egregious or they are repetitious in that manner. And this has got to the point where enforcement, if Senate Bill 52 does not pass, where are we at? Do we keep enforcing laws as somebody thinks they should be or as they are? And this has always been our, I guess, predicament that enforcement gets in, because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. And I'd rather be a person who gets damned if they do, because I do my job. And to sit here and see numbers that should have numbers in them instead of a big zero in there, to me that makes me feel like I'm failing. And I want to let the Marijuana Control Board know, I had a little preparation, I had my report that I gave to the ABC board, which kind of prompted this response, and not directed at the Marijuana Control Board, but just to be put on the record, that I believe that AMCO hired investigators with police backgrounds, police certifications, with the intent to enforce criminal laws of Title IV and Title 17 and 1171. I do not believe you guys hired prior police investigators so we can inspect licensees. I think that's very clear in statute. I think that's very clear in regulation. So I hope that you guys see the importance in this, because we want to move forward. We want to be able to contribute to the state of Alaska in a manner which is productive and cooperative with all departments. I'm feeling like a wall was built up in front of us, and we're trying to get in, but they're keeping us out. That's how it feels. And I really want there to be some dialogue, at least not some response to us, at least. Let's sit down, let's have some discussions about this, instead of feeling like we're twisting somebody's arm, per se. So that's where I'm coming from in this, and I hope my rambling makes some sense.
No, it does. Look at your points are not only well taken, they're points that we've been considering for the last, year or more. So, pardon me, I just don't know whether there's much recourse for the next 36 months. But we will push every chance we get. I do want to send that letter asking for an Attorney General's opinion, and if we don't hear back from the Commissioner of Commerce soon, I'll sign a letter direct to the AG, and hopefully Bob will join me. Just a comment on your graph here. You said that the alcohol board asked you to come up with all these statistics, and clearly this graph ought to be quite satisfying to them, because I remember when I was a young lad, every bar in the back room had a Pac-Man machine. So, I warned you I was going to say that. Hey, we talked earlier about investigation things. Have there been any discussions at the investigator level among different departments? Have you sat down and talked with any of your peers about what the heck is going on with moving people into the Department of Law, and it wasn't that anybody was trying to go behind their directors' backs, it's just that I think there have been some peer-to-peer conversations that have been taking place that can shed any light on anything.
I will say that, we have been having investigator leadership meetings, and we've started that prior to the class study that started, I think, 3 years ago, where the investigators in the state of Alaska that were classed as investigator 2s, 3s, 4s, and 5s would all get together, the supervisors would get together and discuss how we can help each other out or overlapping investigations. And as you can imagine, we each get so busy and inundated with our own things that those meetings don't happen too often. We recently reached out to each other, and we're starting to talk. We have started talking again, especially after Administrative Order 306 came out. And all we know is rumors. We don't have anything set in stone. And, I can't tell you how overpowering feeling that is to not understand or know what's going on. And I think that's why we're all having these meetings, because we're all wanting to feed ourselves, whether it's with rumor or truth. And just like you said, you'll take either one. I think that's probably at the point where we are, and that's probably not a healthy way to look at it. And I would give you only my opinion, not that of the leadership or anything else like that. Without knowing what the goal is, I cannot say what the intention of moving everybody under one roof is. I think that my personal opinion, it's just going to create issues, and I only grabbed this knowledge from seeing what happened with HR and IT when they try to consolidate. It just creates a huge mess. And I know that there's monies involved with certain other investigation, the Department of Health, Department of Labor, that are kind of really reliant on who their employer is.
Okay, so the general consensus among investigators is the same consensus among directors that we don't know nothing. Okay, that's
pretty much it.
Okay, very good. Okay, cool. So we're going to move on to NOVs. Got a couple in here, 2 or 3.
Is there any that the board has any questions regarding?
I did, and just a couple, and somewhat related. One in here was an odor issue, and I think the response was, this occurred, and then I got the notice of violation 2 weeks later. And that doesn't help me because I don't know, nobody notified me that day to fix the issue kind of thing. And then a subsequent one that I was looking at was a person had destroyed a lot of plants and got a notice of violation because they hadn't waited 3 days. And their reason was these plants had the disease and I couldn't keep them for 3 days without potentially infecting more plants. So it was more a question of timing on both of them in terms of if there is an immediate issue, are there, remedies to, if you go out and notice odor, do you contact somebody there directly even before you give the notice? Then the other thing is there some exception that can be made for an immediate destruction? And both those are more workload as well as timing issues. And those was sort of my question.
The first one with the odor, you hit the nail right on the head. It has to do with how much time we spend on something. Effort versus outcome, I guess, is where we would come from. We feel if we smell an odor after we receive a complaint, that is enough reasonable suspicion, probable cause, whatever you might want to call it, to write a violation to the board. Should we bring that to the attention of the licensee at that particular time? It all depends on timing and what the investigator is doing, or if he's responding to 4 other odor complaints, or even if the cultivator is available. A lot of times, especially with limited cultivations, there is not anybody on staff regularly. If they have something going on, there might be nobody there. if we can make an effort to help identify an odor issue, absolutely we can, but I don't feel that somebody's saying, hey, we don't know what's going on because we didn't know what happened during this time. We consistently tell licensees, especially cultivators, that when they get to their place, their premises, that they do a walk around to see if they can smell odor. And we know odor can be, they're present like in 1 hour and gone the next. And it's difficult for enforcement to, even when we have contacted people that are having odor complaints, to make that determination as to what's causing it. Some of them have had to hire engineers to figure out what the problem is. So I think it goes a little bit beyond enforcement's responsibility of being the one to tell somebody, hey, you have a problem, outside of issuing a notice of violation. I think once a licensee realizes that they have an odor complaint, they should address it some way, some shape, or some form. While I understand that it's pertinent to reply to that or them to know that right away, it is just not, I guess, productive enough for us to immediately issue the NOV or to even stop at every single place we receive an odor complaint. As I've told the board before, an odor complaint does take a lot of time. If you consider the time that we received the complaint, the interview that we had with the person making the complaint, the drive to the location, which could be 15 to 30 minutes, or if it's out in the valley or the peninsula, you're talking hours in a full day. The time to document that we could smell something, or oftentimes when we don't. I mean, a whole day could be shot and we don't smell an odor complaint, and we won't write an odor complaint. Then we go back and then we write the notice of violation and we enter it into our tracking, our own data sheet. You're talking maybe at best 2 hours for an odor complaint, just from start to finish, and that's the best time. So I think you hit the nail on the head by saying it's just a matter of time, and considering what you just said and what the licensee just said, we'll definitely have more of a concerted effort to notify the licensee prior to an NOV, by phone or in person, that, hey, we could smell odor, you're going to receive a notice of violation. You might want to look at what's causing that issue. With the other issue that you said about the destruction of plants,
Yeah.
there's a mechanism for that where that should have went to the director. I feel that is a pretty egregious violation, in my opinion. You know, when you're destroying a large amount of plants or marijuana product, there's a mechanism for immediate destruction that other licensees have used where it's been effective. And I understand that we might not be available if this happens on a weekend or such, but this can be cured by regulation. It can't be cured by the director being available unless she's made available 24 hours for those kind of requests, which won't happen. She already works hard enough for that.
Oh, why not?
So I think that the proof, the preponderance of, or the burden of proof falls on the individual. If they can show that they have an infestation and they do it with documentation of video or anything else like that, I think it's up to the board to determine if they need a new regulation that would allow for somebody to do that and self-report the destruction later. I will say that the majority, or almost every single licensee that we've had that said that they had to destroy or cull a large amount of plants due to infestation, that have kept them on site till we confirmed, every single one of them has been confirmed by enforcement. And we do make it a matter of principle to go and look at these places, not because we don't trust somebody, but just because we want to document that it was done correctly. And in this case, it was not done correctly.
Okay, thanks.
This is for you guys to remind me. The regulation says that we have to notify 3 days in metric. And then did we put out a memo that requires the email 3 days prior to destruction? or did we put that in the regulations?
I think the regulations now say, find that. Give the board notice on a form prescribed by the board not later than 3 days before.
And this particular NOV, it wasn't an infestation, it wasn't a disease, it was a genetic thing. The plants have gone hermaphrodite, whatever that means. So I'm wondering if, in a circumstance like that, if you couldn't, depending on how tall the plants are, throw a contractor trash bag over them to at least keep them out of the airstream. They're not destroyed yet, and then report it and say, I'm gonna destroy these, There must be some best practices that a cultivator can use to protect their investment when a situation like this arises that is a stopgap between, protecting their cultivate, and destruction.
Not to pick on this licensee, but they did not do what was in their best interest. This could have been resolved, especially when it wasn't a communicable disease or whatever you guys call it between plants. I don't know if hermaphrodite, I would imagine pollen would be at play with that. And I would imagine that's what would be the reason for the immediate destruction of that. But I also do know there is ways that you can contain it, but at the same time while containing it, you're brushing it up, it's flying all over the place, you really don't know. I've actually read and seen where places that have been exposed to that pollen had to cull their entire cultivation. So I see the absolute need for that in those circumstances, even though it's not a disease, where that was necessary, at least in the interest of your finances, to do something like that. But there's also the public safety and public concern aspects that come into play, and the enforcement concerns. Why are you getting rid of these? If they're flowering, how many pounds? Because hermaphrodites can have usable flower on them. If they're not being destroyed the correct way, what's happening with that flower? If you got 10 pounds of usable flower that's growing on a plant that's hermaphrodited, that's still usable marijuana. Is that going and making its way back into the black market? Again, not saying that negative about licensees, but those are concerns.
Sure. Yeah.
And the moment we don't look or address that kind of thing, it's going to pop up.
Okay, all right, cool. Is there any other question about any of the other NOVs?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
Could I just encourage the board to, again, strongly encourage licensees to respond? I mean, there's a number of NOVs in here that really have some significant issues, and there's been no response to them. And I think it's in the board's interest to know that the licensees are taking steps to address issues when they
you're exactly right. And so number one, respond. And as I said, we're going to start moving into a evolutionary stage in regulation. We're going to, tighten some up. We may loosen some up. And some of these, there may be some point where we say to enforcement, okay, now classify the NOVs, see what issues have how big a stack. And clearly those be things that might need to be addressed in regulation. But your responses to the NOVs are not only in your best interest, but they're helpful to us. And they're helpful to enforcement. So take the time. I mean, some of these responses are an email, 3-sentence email. Yeah, this is what happened. We're sorry it won't happen again. Okay, and some of them are better. But respond to the NOV. Don't be scared. Just answer them.
Mr. Chairman, with that, I'd kind of like to point out, when you guys interpreted that response, NOV regulation, where it had those words mixed up, I don't know if it would be out of character or out of my place to recommend that you guys clarify that, because it is my belief, clarify by change of regulation, to make sure that they do respond, because I believe that there is a direct breakdown in enforcement or regulation when we identify a regulation or violation of a regulation and it is never addressed by the board or by the licensee. And that's what we have here. And if you look back at some of the past NOVs, some of them are very serious violations. And when the AMCO office has access to records without search warrants and they have to provide us these things, it should halfway be expected that a response to a violation should be documented and brought back before the board. I'll be honest and tell you guys I didn't agree with that interpretation, but I've honored it, I've respected it. But I believe that after a couple of years has gone by, I think it is very apparent how important it is that those responses get back to the board as they do in alcohol.
Mr. Chair? Sure. The only concern I have with that, James, is that at least as how I have interpreted what we have done over the years and as we've talked, you guys go out, you find an issue, you talk to the licensee, you try to provide the education, mea culpas are done, and nothing happens after that. Everything seems to be fine. Then there's the violation, and we get a notice of violation. And I think under one of our regulations, that those words change under the fine structure. They don't become a notice of violation; they be called something else. And we're supposed to be notified about that, and we're supposed to be able to talk to the applicant or talk to the licensee or issue something. But then, if it pertains to something, as you said, some of these are quite serious. I've always been under the expectation if they're that serious, then we get the accusation. And, to talk about, this has been an NOV and it's out there for 2 years and it's a very serious one, and yet we've not gotten an accusation. So if there's something in between a violation and an accusation, that's not being very clear to us and how we should act. We have always asked questions about, what do we do with these NOVs? Do we automatically give them a fine? And I think that's where this regulation project came up, but one of the criticisms of that is, where basically they say something in a notice of violation, then a fine takes place, that's sort of my visceral response to what you say. And I agree. If you guys go out and do work, you bring it to us and we go, okay, fine, thanks, goodbye. We're not sending you the best message of appreciation of your work. And I don't ever want that to happen from me anyway. But at the same time, if I'm going to have to sit up here as, lack of a better term, a judge and jury to decide whether somebody should be fined, then I need somebody to explain to me the seriousness of the issue and that I need to pay attention to that. Otherwise, I'm not going to. So that's sort of where I'm at.
And I appreciate that, and I think this definitely comes in, there's a gap, there's something that fills in that gap, the fine schedule. And I know there's been some comments on it, but it's not perfect, but I think that would resolve a lot of these issues. And I'll use an example of myself writing a notice violation that appeared very egregious, that we received a very, no response at all, that turned into an accusation, where at the end of it, if they would have answered the notice of violation the way they did in the accusation, that would have never turned into accusation to begin with. So in my head, I understand, and my whole intention of them writing responses is not to get a aha moment. It's just for us to understand what happened. Sometimes there is a reasonable explanation as to why a violation occurred, and we go into these virtual transfers that Mr. Emmett asked us for clarification on. And my understanding, in every other state, virtual transfers are only done as needed and they're frowned upon. It's a one-time deal, and they're caused, what virtual transfers are is if somebody makes a mistake on a manifest. And instead of manifesting it back to be corrected, to reject it, or to fix a mistake, they create a virtual transfer where the product, the actual amount, let's say they received 1,000 pounds and it was actually 1,000 grams, which, believe it or not, we've had that. and they email us and saying, we contacted Metric, they said we need to create a new manifest that has 1,000 grams and not the 1,000 pounds, and it's a virtual transfer. I think we need to get out of the habit of doing reoccurring virtual transfers, because those are fixing mistakes that should have never happened to begin with. And when they do happen, you often see them accompanied by a notice of violation, because it all stems from a violation of a manifest that was either transferred or received incorrectly by a licensee. If I was a licensee and I was on the receiving end and I seen, hey, you're signing for 1,000 pounds, I would tell them, no, that's not correct, and I would reject it right then and there. When there's that, and I understand that it's a big example, but there's also cases where they should be counting everything, they should be weighing everything that they're receiving. And if they don't, they are not doing their due diligence as a licensee when they are receiving or shipping marijuana. So I know that there's certain circumstances and volume creates mistakes. We do it ourselves. We get so busy that sometimes we take in a lot and we start making mistakes. But I just want to be clear if everybody knew what virtual transfers were and what caused those. So this goes back to the whole issue of things that don't need to be brought back before the board, or things that we shouldn't expect action from. But I think it should be expected that a licensee responds to a violation to at least let the board know why it occurred.
And if I can sort of reiterate what Mr. Holscher said, so there's a NOV in here that somebody has a total of 30, 40 plus grams differential between what was on hand and what was in Metric. And perhaps there's a reasonable explanation, or perhaps this is indicative of some serious problem and needs an accusation. But accusations are incredibly time-consuming. I have been working on one from things that happened last year, probably early in the year, because the time that I have to focus on this is limited. So for me to write an accusation and then the person to then, we schedule a hearing, the board comes together for a hearing, notices have to go out, lots of things have to happen, and then for the licensee to be like, oh yeah, there's a reasonable explanation, blah, 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 and we all go, okay. Well, that's a waste of my time, your time, the licensee's time. So if they can provide that explanation that makes sense, then we all know that, okay, this is okay, they recognize that they did something wrong, but they explained it, and we don't have to take it any further. But when we don't hear anything, then it does become that, oh, what is going on here? And then it may be that we take the time to do those things that may or may not be necessary.
And I agree. I appreciate that. But we meet probably more often than was anticipated in terms of the statute. But there are many days when I give this type of business very little thought, if at any, because I got lots of other stuff to do. So if you guys want me to take something serious, you gotta prompt me. Not quite the 2x4 between the eyes, but you need to let me know that hey, you can't ignore this, or you shouldn't ignore this. And so, we get a summary of licensing, we get a summary of enforcement, and then we get this entire list of 38 virtual pages or whatever of NOVs, and I won't go through all of them. But if there was something up the top, look at number 1, look at number 300, look at number 200, would point me in the right direction of what you think is a little bit more than an NOV, but not quite an accusation. And it prompts me to know how I can best support the efforts that are going on and also, with the industry. So, if you can tell me in here we have 35 accusations and this one and this one, this one has no response, I would particularly look at those. So anyway, I gotta say, there's gotta be some process in here that's a little bit less than this, because I appreciate all the work you guys do. I appreciate the work that the industry is busy, but I am not gonna spend much of many days outside of these meetings and the prep time on paying attention.
I like this spreadsheet. I mean, I know, it'd say, well, do a little more work for us, but I would rather have an Excel spreadsheet that says, it's got the NOV number, who it went to, maybe it doesn't even say what it's about, but it says no response, and then we go back and dig into it. I don't know, just again, things that make it easier for us, are good, because one of these days we're gonna get down to 4 meetings a year and 2 days a meeting, maybe. So I think that's kind of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And, I mean, James was gonna give us a 10-minute report, we've been here an hour, so.
Yep.
I don't wanna drag this on, but I do think that, we as a volunteer board that meets more often than people anticipated need to have a little bit more direction pointed out to us if you expect us to respond and get back, so.
Thank you. Through the chair, Mr. Jones, I appreciate that, and I think expectation is what's gonna happen when we start doing that. We will do that. Thank you very much.
Okay, do I? Yeah, do I? All right. Moving right along to the licensing report.
All right, so my report should only take about an hour.
So if you do it in 2 minutes, you get real praise?
Yeah, I get another cookie. So staff updates and uploads, it's very similar to the last meeting. We still have 2 dedicated marijuana examiners, and we've got one that is currently processing both alcohol and marijuana. Alcohol license renewal applications are almost completely done. I sent out this morning the marijuana renewal notice via email, and we should have the functionality available on our website as well. If you have an active operating license and didn't get an email, please let staff know. There are a couple of emails that bounced back. I would like to really quickly address a date concern in the renewal application notice. In the very top where it says the date for your renewal application, I put May 1st, 2018. Clearly, it was not sent out on May 1st, 2018. I will probably correct that on the website, but probably not send a whole new email to everyone. The queue has continued to be reduced, and if you look at the timeline for new and transfer applications, those have been shortened once again. It looks like there were about 9 applications waiting for review in the queue when I wrote my report. I know we received several applications after that, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Mr. Chair?
Go right ahead.
I just want to say, looking at the decrease in the dates and some of the time between incomplete and application, what goes in the queue and stuff, I was pretty impressed. And I think, I don't know why, and I will give all the credit to the licensing staff in the industry, but, I spend a lot of time, as people know, reading these applications, and they are better and better every meeting. I get fewer and fewer questions. I'm sort of worried about the fact that I think I'm reading the same thing all the time, and people have an industry idea, well, if I say this, somebody won't ask a question, and I just hope that enforcement is finding those useful. The applications are so much better, easier to read, and to cut down the time, I think is kudos to whoever is responsible for that.
I would just state that I'm sure that is a great combination of licensees receiving clearer expectations and their initial applications being more complete, and we really appreciate that. And then again, staff being able to communicate those expectations and make sure that they're met. So thank you, everyone.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for this report, and thank, on behalf of the board, thank your staff and Director McConnell. Clearly, it's your leadership also that's making this happen. So thank you.
So I do have one question. What license rescinded? What does that mean? Does that mean they did, we did they surrender the license? What does that mean?
What does which mean? I'm sorry, I missed.
Rescinded.
Rescinded. That means that the applicant said, I'm rescinding my application, I no longer want to go forward with this. So it comes from the applicant.
So they never got operational?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, if they became licensed and then decided they wanted to give it all up, then it becomes surrendered.
Oh, yeah, I've got a request, since we're talking about spreadsheets. Can we get a list, maybe it's on the website. There is a list of current licensees on the website, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All right, because I see names that I don't recognize, like, when did we do them, you know? So, okay, yeah, it's on the website. All right, I'll just depend on that. All right, thank you, Michael. Anything else for Michael? Okay, then, let's, you guys ready for an after lunch stretch, or?
Yes.
Okay, we'll come back at quarter after or thereabouts. All right, we are back. Marijuana Control Board, and 20 past, so not too bad on the break. So we are on regulations. It's 1 o'clock, it's 2:20. Okay, so we've got two parts here. One is board request. Does anybody have any regulations projects they'd like to propose?
Well, I don't have any I want to propose, but I was looking at the list, and there's some that are on there that were assigned to Mr. Emmett that never got completed. We should probably reassign.
And Mr. Miller, through the chair, so I listed a point person, started listing a point person so that, because there was a time back early before even I was here when board members were bringing their own drafts of regulations for consideration, and so I was listing a point person, so if we had questions regarding what the intent was, we could actually go back to that board member. Now, who gets listed is the person who made the motion, so I think it's perfectly fine to identify another point person for the ones that are open, but on the other hand, we really haven't needed to go back to any individual. There are certain regulations where the board has sort of assigned a subcommittee, so, and also I think I know how to contact all of you if I have a question. So you can, it's fine to do it, but I also am not sure it's,
Very good. Yeah, go ahead.
And we did hear a couple public comments today about the issues some of the young mothers are having, and I would like to see if we could come up with something. I'm not saying anything's going to happen, but not looking at it doesn't seem like the right thing to do. So,
yeah, I could agree with that. I think that is. I think that there were a number of legitimate points brought up there on that issue, and yeah. So anything else from the board? We kind of been talking in the hallway, myself and the director and Harriet, our counsel, about the whole regulation process. We were just talking now about why can't we do something like the Board of Fish, Board of Game does, and have at least one meeting a year where people can bring regulations proposals, but it was suggested that, well, anybody can suggest an idea for a regulation. So I personally, I would like to see more suggestions coming from industry, as, for example, the one about moms. We have technical issues that were discussed today that I don't know nothing about. Nick might. I don't know how much Mr. Jones knows about, horticulture. So there are technical issues that clearly will, require some regulatory response. And the people that are really qualified to make suggestions about what the regulations might want to say are sitting out in the audience and not up here. So just kind of keep that in mind. I mean, the chair would certainly welcome people coming up with solutions-based regulations ideas. And the other thing is the whole process, the public comment period, it can only be in writing once the clock has started on regulations. I think we'll probably keep talking about this a little bit. I mean, we're not going to, settle anything now, but there have been concern by members of the public about some of our regulations, again, about the inability to discuss them during a meeting, during public. So that might be, if people have concerns about that, talk to us in the marijuana mailbox, and see if anybody has any ideas how we can make that work better. So with that, I will hand it to the director to go through 14, 15, and 16.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will start with number 14. So, the board may remember that the testing working group brought forward a package of regulations, changes, recommendations, and the board evaluated that draft in the fall of 2018, but it was ultimately determined that most of the draft needed some additional work, and the board only adopted a small portion of that project, which was revisions to the definition of THC and CBD. So, and the remainder was referred back to the testing working group for more work. So this document is the testing working group's work on the rest of those revisions. And so a summary of the proposed changes in this section is conformity to the maximum size of bulk packages. So the board, the testing working group and the board had discussed allowing harvest batches to be separated into 10-pound packages. And there was interest in the testing working group that if we're going to have 10-pound packages for the purposes of testing, we should also have 10-pound packages for the purposes of transportation and other situations in which we limit the size of packages. So that was discussed in the working group, and changes are proposed in a couple of different places in regulation, and the enforcement staff did not perceive any problems with that change. Second change is to clarify, so the board had adopted a regulation that says your sample size increases with your harvest batch package size. So there's this new table in regulation that says if your harvest batch is 5 pounds, your sample that is sent to testing has to contain 8 1-gram, what we're now calling subsamples. And so we changed the language to talk about subsamples, in part to make it clear that you're not just grabbing 8 grams from somewhere, but that you're supposed to be taking 8 1-gram representative samples from your 5-pound harvest batch package. The sample, again, has to be representative, and it shouldn't be adulterated or ground up or homogenized. Those are things that would happen at the testing facility. This regulation also addressed failed materials and retests. And so the way the regulations currently read is that you have this harvest, and a harvest is defined as what you take from plants that were grown at the same time in the same place using the same methods that you harvest at the same time. And now you break the harvested material into 10-pound packages. So now if one test fails, your entire harvest of all your plants has to be destroyed or sent to concentrate, to be made into concentrate with permission. So now the idea is that if your test of each 10, that you have to have a test for each 10 pounds, and if one test fails, only that 10 pounds gets affected. And other harvest batch packages, if you have a 50-pound harvest, you're going to have 5 10-pound packages. If one of them fails but 4 of them pass, the 4 that pass are good to go, and only the one that fails has to be addressed in some way. Yes.
So you don't fail the whole harvest.
Correct. And then there's a new subsection D that is proposed to address the retesting of marijuana concentrate that passed a required test. And I want to carefully point out to the board that the board opened a retesting regulations project at the last meeting to address this issue. So because we were dealing with 306-660 in this open regulations project, we wrapped it in there, but the testing working group has not seen subsection D of 306-660. So I wanted to make that very clear. But that basically says we had testimony that product manufacturers, at times, they had a concentrate that passed required testing, but that they still wanted to reduce the level of residual solvents that were found in the product by further processing. And and because the current regulations don't have any mechanism to request a retest if your marijuana or marijuana product passes testing, there needed to be this adjustment. The working group continues to have discussions about whether aspergillus testing is effective, whether there are false positives, whether it really does have a benefit in protecting the public. There's ongoing discussions about other possibly more appropriate tests, such as testing for water activity and pH. Those changes, there are no changes regarding those issues in this particular project, but that's part of what's being discussed right now. The revisions to this project have not been sent out for public comment, so the board's options today are to put this out for public comment as written, to amend it and put it out for public comment, to send it back to staff and or the testing working group for additional revisions, or to close the project without action. Thank you.
So what's your pleasure?
Motion to put out for public comment.
Okay, move to put out for public comment. Any discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
A couple of issues, and my notes, I think, may be clear, but I may have mislabeled something. But in one part, it talks about batches not to exceed 10 pounds, which I don't have any problem with. Maybe more of a technical question, but the tax division changed the way they tax, and so, bud and flower is taxed at one rate. Was it leaves or something else gets taxed at a different level? When you say segregated into harvest batches, am I then to assume that a batch would not be a mixed 10-pound bag of some that get taxed at $50 and some get taxed at $25? That's one question. And related to that is, when you go down further on and it says, if you have a 10-pound batch, you have to take X number of samples. If I understand the testimony we've had at various times, bud and flower test different than leaves and trim. If they take the shakings or the keep or whatever. So I guess I'm curious as to when you say in here, a batch, because you've taken out the word homogeneous, and you just talked about a batch. Are you assuming the cultivator is segregating both for quality, type, tax, so that when they take a sample, they're not giving 8 samples of leaves when half the sample should have been bud?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, excellent questions. You may recall that one of the original proposals that came before you was to require grading, so that you had, when you had a harvest, that you had to separate your bud and your flower into separate packages from your leaf and your trim. And I think we had trim A and trim B, so kind of two. I think the trim A was supposed to be sort of like really small bud or things that were good but weren't really, really good, and then your trim B and then keef. And we were going to require that you separate those and you get each one tested separately so that there was a more accurate potency test result for the product that you were offering to the public, and that you could have more confidence that when the potency is X% on the package, it's a package of bud and it was the bud that was tested, or when it's a pre-roll made with trim, that the potency really reflects the testing of that trim. We got comments on that, particularly from limited cultivators who said that triples or quadruples my testing costs because I do such a small harvest normally I would get it tested once, and now you're saying I have to get 3 or 4 tests for this one harvest. So because of those, the testing working group kind of backed away from that concept and went back to just saying you have to get each 10-pound package tested. There's nothing that says here's how you have to create those 10-pound packages. There are regulations in the Department of Revenue that say, as you noted, bud and trim is taxed at this rate. Bud and flower is taxed at this rate, trim is taxed at this other rate, and if you have a mixed package, it's taxed at the higher rate. So it really sort of leaves it in the hands of the cultivator to decide how they want to package. It doesn't solve the issue of accuracy of the potency results, because you still end up with, you could end up with mixed bud and trim together that gets tested and labeled as a certain potency, which may not be fully accurate for everything that's in that package. So it doesn't really solve all our problems, but we do think it takes a step forward from where we are today. And if I could ask Mr. Smith to come up, and if he has anything to add, he's been doing, do you mind, Jed? Sorry to put you on the spot. He's been doing most of the work or all of the work with the testing working group from the office perspective, so if he has anything to add to what I've said.
We Smiths and Jones get all the calls, so, anyway, and that's helpful, and this is, I'm sure it's gonna go out to public comments, so the industry now knows some comments that I might be interested in. The other one had to do with, the latter part, the 660, D and C, basically. And D, you said you had added in from something else, and so that would certainly go out. But under C, it talked about if a marijuana cultivation or marijuana product submits a written request on a form prescribed by the board for a retest of the product that failed a required test, the board may authorize a retest. The only comment I had there, and also with D, was would we want to consider the possibility of limiting those numbers, in that if we had a manufacturer in a calendar year request 10 retests, would we look skeptical on that particular vendor? When you look at 665, which says we, the board, or you, can order a test, would we look at the reasons for those retests? Would we be better off to say you can get 3 retests a year? If you order a 4th, we're going to implement 665, which says that, we're going to require a test because we're trying to figure out why you seem to disagree so much with the test results. Is there something in your process of manufacturing that you're going to, you continually want to retest something? So especially if it's to remove more solvents or remove something else, is your manufacturing not working so that, after the 4th retest you haven't figured out that you got to remove more of the solvent? So that was just a timing question. Should we put some limits on this?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, first of all, I always require a good reason for why a retest is needed, and if it's just, I don't think this is right, I say no, that's not a good reason. So I'm possibly, sure it's not popular, but I'm a little stingy with retests. I have, in terms of we were too high on solvents, we need to redo our processes, I don't see a lot of multiple requests for that, because it seems to me it's not efficient for the product manufacturers to keep making those mistakes. I think they learn from what has happened, and they correct it, and so that doesn't happen again. So I think if what you suggest were happening, I would say, yeah, that's a good idea, but we don't see that happening. And I forgot to point out one thing, this regulation, so while I have my microphone on, this regulation package includes stating that if a cultivation facility is transferring product to a licensed product manufacturer, that doesn't have to be tested first.
Okay, so we got good.
And that was gonna be my third question. And I get trying to think of a reason, and I guess it was, I'm gonna send, this is just leaf and trim, and it's a mixture of stuff, and it's all gonna get obliterated and put into a concentrate anyway. And then that concentrate would get tested. But hopefully the manufacturer's cognizant of, a product they're getting that's not been tested to, take a look at, dust, dirt, mites, mold, whatever, some kind of visual inspection. But, is there a lot of that potential, a lot of transfer from a cultivator to a manufacturer without going through testing? Is that anticipated to be a lot of material?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, yes, I think it will be. I mean, I think the whole product, we have, 15 or 20 product manufacturing licenses. Michael, what does your report say? But their whole, everything they do is based on getting product from cultivators to extract. So I think there'll be a good deal of it. And I think, we definitely have heard from some product manufacturers that, no, they like to have the test ahead of time so that it helps them set what they need to do for their recipes, for lack of a better word. And it's possible that they can negotiate with their suppliers that there will be a test and who pays for it. I don't know. That's certainly a possibility. But I think it'll be interesting to get comments from product manufacturers how they feel about this potential change as this goes out for comment.
There are currently 23 active operating product manufacturers.
All right, so the motion is to send tracking and grading out for public comment, basically unchanged. Is that correct? Okay, all those in favor of sending it out for public comment, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, send that one out. Next, testing oversight, tab 15.
All right. Maybe I could ask my good friends from DEC to come up, if that's okay. So, with
Do we also, or maybe after them, since the testing committee saw this, was our testing committee member involved in going over the manual?
No, not.
It said the testing committee read the operating manual.
Yes.
Was Brandon in on that as the testing committee?
I don't know if Brandon read it or not. Brandon had the opportunity to read it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Same with the meeting. Same with the meeting packets. As a member of the testing committee, did you go over the operating manual for testing that's in here?
I did.
All right, then. Okay, then. Okay, that's right. That's fine. That's okay. Okay, that's all we need to hear. Great. Thanks. Okay.
So we have Patrice McKinney, who's the chief of the Environmental Health Laboratory, and Steve Krupe, who's, I forgot this, facility services. Quality systems. Thank you. And in the back of the room we have Christina Carpenter, who's the director of the Division of Environmental Health, under which the Environmental Health Laboratory exists. So, as I mentioned earlier in my director's report, we are looking to partner with the Environmental Health Laboratory for them to become the board's contractor for the purposes of overseeing testing labs, the scientific portion of testing labs, of course, not the licensing portion. And so this regulations change, and this change has not been through the testing committee, but I don't think it needs to be because it's more about the board's processes and not about testing processes, with the exception of Mr. Krupe's document, which the testing working group has seen. So this regulations change proposes three major things. One, that it would require the board's contractor to review testing facility applications before they come to the board and provide a written report regarding the application. It would basically sort of be a recommendation to the board. 2, adopting by reference the testing facility compliance manual, a copy of which was attached, which Mr. Krupe drafted. And again, that has been to the testing working group upon, and all of the existing operating labs are invited to participate in the testing working group and have had the opportunity to make comments on this document. And it's still in draft form, so maybe this is a time I'll let Mr. Krupe talk about that a little bit.
Sure, go right ahead, if you want to tell us about it.
About the compliance document, essentially it's just laying out general quality assurance, quality control, and operating principles. The cry that you often hear in the industry is there's no standard protocols, and so this is an attempt to essentially put out a standard protocol to set up quality assurance, quality control within the testing laboratory. What specific quality control steps do I need to have confidence in the data for my customers to have confidence in the data? And essentially, given an agreement with AMCO, we would use this document as part of one of our resources to actually go in and examine laboratories, not only look at their documents, their data, but their actual procedures. How are they actually operating?
Great. Any questions for DC folks? I think this is a good move to establish this kind of partnership with the state. Now, so a question I've been wondering, you maybe can answer this, is how many environmental laboratories are there?
Boy, you want to narrow down that question.
It's a rhetorical question.
Yeah, in the state of Alaska, there's only a couple across the country. Thousands.
No, I meant in Alaska.
Well, in Alaska,
I meant in Alaska.
Laboratories, 2 or 3.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Microbiology labs only 3.
Well, they're drinking
But
water.
but those are like hospitals and stuff and health corporations, right? Yeah.
Some of them are,
Yeah. Right.
Some are health corporations, treatment plants.
Right.
Some are commercial for profit
Yeah,
as well.
you know where my question was coming from. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, this is good work.
Okay, so can I,
Yes,
I haven't
go ahead.
finished explaining. So the third thing is to require any changes to a testing facility's standard operating procedures to be approved by the board's contractor before the change actually takes place at the lab. The requirement for the marijuana testing facility to pay all costs of random validation is proposed to be removed, but the testing license fee is proposed to be increased. It seems to me that the entire industry has an interest in having well-regulated testing labs, but that the license fee was renewal fee, yes, the license renewal fee was kind of low. So consistent with what the board has done with all of the license fees, leave that initial fee where it was at the beginning, but increase the renewal fee. And our sort of vision for how this would work is that the Environmental Health Laboratory would, again, review any testing facility applications, but then once it was licensed, once these facilities are licensed, that they would do regular audits in the same way that they audit other types of labs that they oversee, and that also if any of the AMCO investigators came across some sort of problem that needed, with a lab that needed some sort of investigation, that the environmental health lab staff would be available to assist us on a basis to go in and address whatever issue was at hand. So I would request, and the other thing about this compliance manual is that it would be adopted by reference. And I don't know when you'll feel that it's final, so we probably would need to get a final draft before the board. But that all licensed testing facilities would need to comply with this, not just ones that come on board after this regulation is adopted. So the regulation specifically proposes that any existing operating testing facility have to come into compliance with this manual within, and this proposes 6 months.
Okay, any comments or questions from the board? Motion to put this out for public comment?
Motion to, put out for public comment.
Okay, any, discussion on the motion? All those in favor of sending out for public comment, say aye.
Aye.
All right, great, thank you, looking forward to a good partnership with DEC. Which brings us to, how do you pronounce that? Oh, on-site consumption. Cleanup.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This project, and I apologize for sending you two drafts, I had forgotten about one issue that the board had specifically mentioned, so I had to catch that. But it addresses some issues that the board discussed at the last meeting regarding the adopted on-site consumption regulations, and it proposes the following changes. One, it addresses in 306.030 what happens when there is a proposed endorsement in an area with no local government, and so it just requires the same things that it would require for a new license. Two, it creates a allowance for an on-site consumption endorsement where only edibles would be consumed and there would be no consumption by inhalation. It would be clear that that could be permitted in a retail store that was not in a freestanding building, because the issue of freestanding was a carve-out from the statewide smoking ban law. So if there isn't going to be any smoking, it doesn't really fall under that provision. Three, and then sort of following along on that, clarifies that a ventilation system is only required if there's going to be consumption by inhalation. So if you're only going to have consumption through edibles, you don't need to have a ventilation system, that separate ventilation system. That if you're going to have request an outdoor consumption area where there is not going to be consumption by inhalation, then you don't need to talk about where the air intake vents are for the neighboring buildings. And clarify that a freestanding building may include other marijuana licensed premises. So if you have a building that contains only, say, 3 marijuana licensees, that would still be considered a freestanding building, even though it's not just the retail store. So these are proposed to the board for your consideration, and decide how you want to deal with them.
Okay, great, thank you. Once again, it kind of brings up the definition of local government, but I guess we still have to talk to the legislature about that. You got communities that have local governments, but they're not municipalities. So are there any, do we have a motion to do anything with this one right now? Send it out, get changes?
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead, yeah.
So, the multiple licenses in one building, is that multiple licenses by the same owners, or can you have 3 different licensees in one building, and is that?
Through the chair, Mr. Miller, if I didn't quite finish your sentence, but I knew where you were going, I hope, pardon me. Because we see a pattern where an individual or a group of individuals who wish to hold all 3 licenses, cultivation, manufacturing, and retail, we see a pattern by which the retail license is often held by a different entity from the other 2, which I believe has to do with, is due to tax implications. We didn't put in a provision that it had to be held by the same licensee, because oftentimes that wouldn't be the case. So as written, it could be 3 entirely different licensees.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I had some concerns about that, because in reading the smoking law at the state level that defines freestanding, it basically talks about freestanding as being in a building not shared with any other businesses. Doesn't distinguish whether or not it's a marijuana business versus a tobacco business versus a paint shop versus an auto detailing shop. And part of the smoke-free emphasis is on protecting employees from the secondhand smoke. So I'm not sure that we had the ability to redefine what is freestanding to include a building that has other businesses in it, just because, they would be exempt because they're all marijuana businesses. There's a couple of applications we have coming up where I see that. I see that they're part of one a distillery and one something else, so I don't think those would qualify. But I'm just not sure if we can amend a statutory definition of a freestanding by simply saying it's not, it can be in a separate building, but that separate building has 3 other businesses and they're all marijuana-related businesses, that it's freestanding. But if it was a card shop, if it was a liquor store, if it was an auto detailing, then no, it wouldn't be a freestanding building. I don't think we can do that.
Through the chair, I can address that. We're just looking at the smoking bill, and freestanding is not defined in terms of existing businesses. That's not part of the definition. As a general proposition, you do have the ability to interpret that. You also have the ability to interpret business as being kind of business. But in any event, I don't see that businesses are part of the definition.
And I'll just read it for the record. Freestanding means a building that is not supported by another structure and does not share ventilation or internal airspace with an adjoining structure, and smoke from the building cannot travel into the adjoining structure.
So basically, that means there's no constraint in there for, it's just talking about the physical relationship of one building to another.
That's right.
Okay. Does that clarify things there for you, Mr. Jones?
No.
Okay, that's fine, that's all right, no, that's right, because I was thinking, in all likelihood, if we were to make a regulatory drafting error, that is up against any statute, that would get caught by the department in the review, and they would say, oh, no, you can't say that. Not that you wouldn't necessarily catch it while we're doing it here, but...
Mr. Chair, you know, we have your back. Absolutely.
No, I know you do. No, I mean, the point is, as Mr. Jones said, you know, maybe we can't do this against the smoking statute, you know, but statutes control regulations, so we actually can't screw up.
That's true. And when I said you can interpret it, really, your authority to interpret a statute is really your own statute. The smoking bill is not your statute. But that's exactly why, and this is important for the public to know, why regulations go through a very careful analysis of the Department of Law. It's to make sure that the regulation is consistent with itself and with other regulations in the program and consistent with existing statute. It goes through several pairs of eyes, and not much gets past us.
So is there anything you'd like to amend in this, Mr. Jones, or should we just try and vote? Yeah, we need a motion.
For comment, right?
Yeah, no, we don't have a motion to set up for public comment.
And Mr. Chair, if I may,
I don't think we don't have a motion to send it out for public comment yet.
One more thing,
Sure.
just as a reminder, if there is a provision in a regulation that doesn't pass legal muster, what would happen in this case is that provision we would request that it be withdrawn or amended, but the rest of the project could go forward.
I would like to make a motion to put it out for public comment.
Okay, is there any discussion on the motion to send the cleanup out? And I think the biggest part of this is the you know, edibles only component. If there's a conflict with the smoking statute, that'll certainly come out in the wash. Anything else, Mr. Jones? Okay, Then all those in favor of sending the, put a number on it here, 3AC 306.030 amendment, cleanup, for, on-site consumption out for public comment, signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion does not pass, so.
No, it does.
It does, because regulations
Oh,
don't
it's
have to be...
regulation, you're right, thank you, okay, all right. Okay, one down. And a few more to go. Okay, the next one would be out-of-state investment in testing facilities, which I will take credit for having that. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you may recall, Mr. Jones took your bright idea and modified it to make it even brighter. So this would allow testing facilities to have non-resident involvement with the approval of the board if certain ownership limitations were met and determined, and the board considers certain factors that are listed in 306.015F2. So the board's factors would be about whether non-resident involvement enhances marijuana testing in the state, commitment to invest equity, expertise in testing, expertise in developing standards for testing, expertise in maintaining quality control, and provision of state-of-the-art equipment for testing. The project has been out for a minimum of 30 days comment, and 2 comments were received, which were attached.
Okay, and of course, taking the long view, we are the air crossroads of the world, so. Okay, is there a motion to send this out for public comment? Oh, no, I'm sorry, this is for adoption, right?
Correct.
Okay, is there a motion, to adopt?
Mr. Chair, I would move to adopt,
Out-of-state investment.
out-of-state investment, 306015.
Okay. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, then all those in favor of adopting the amendment to 3AC 306.015, signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there's 3 ayes, there's 3 of us, so that has been adopted. It's the second time in a row I've used the right word. Yeah, okay. Okay, the fine schedule.
Mr. Chair, the board about a year ago had expressed a desire to develop a fine schedule, and some of the conversation that we had earlier in this meeting sort of speaks to a need for something between an NOV and an accusation, and this proposal is, in some ways, fills that need. It was worked on by a subcommittee of Mr. Jones and Mr. Ankerfeld. The subcommittee had recommended some changes to the initial draft, which was developed by the staff, and then I had subsequently added some other changes that reflected subsequent board actions, such as the adoption of the on-site consumption regulation. The general concept is changing a notice of violation to a citation of violation, which comes with a penalty. It's an automatic penalty, except that the licensee always has the option to appeal the penalty to the board. Basically, it would be like getting a notice of violation with a fine or a suspension, and if you don't think that it was warranted, then you appeal to the board and you come to the next board meeting and nothing happens to you until you come to the board meeting with your appeal, and the board hears about the violation and determines whether the fine and or suspension was warranted. So there is an increasing severity of fines and or suspension penalties for repetition of that particular violation within a 3-year period. So it's only that violation. It's not with different violations. It isn't like you get phase 1 for one violation and then you violate some other provision and you start at phase 2 for that provision. There are some other changes proposed in talking about the enforcement of these regulations. But I think, you know, the board asked for comment on this and received 11 comments, which is great. And this is a significant change. It's a significant change for the industry. It's a significant change for our office. So it would be my recommendation that with only 3 board members currently present, and I would recommend that the board not consider an adoption vote pending a full complement of board members, which hopefully we will have at the next meeting. Should that not be your decision, I would be happy to go into more detail about the various changes that are in the draft.
Yes, I was going to make a motion to hold this. One of the options given to us is basically to send it back to staff. And while that's an option, I had read through the comments and it raised some issues that I'm not sure I considered the first time around. Some of the conversation with enforcement today, and I think there may be some issues that could get addressed that wouldn't require it to go back out for public comment, but again, I may be wrong. So I was going to move that we hold this to the next meeting and allow me to work with the director to see if some of the comments in the public comments we can address in a manner that satisfies both or not. And just see if maybe we might, at the July meeting, bring back some changes. I would be willing to do that effort, because I think there's a couple of things in the comments that us taking another look at sort of how this goes about, and I would volunteer to work on that. So that would be my motion to hold it, and allow me to work with the director on it.
Okay, and, you know, this is, in some respects, this is as impactful on the industry as on-site consumption was on parties other than the industry. So I wonder if maybe at our July meeting we could just have an hour of public comment on this regulation to give. I mean, we have some good comments here. People say they like it, but they don't like it. Some people say they don't like it at all. So let's give the industry an opportunity at the next in July meeting to have an hour of public comment just on this. Instead of maybe end up less than an hour, but go ahead and start formulating what you want. You get 35 seconds each, so that'll fill everybody in. Yeah, we're trying to be as transparent as possible. Yeah, so let's do that, and we get a motion to table to July consideration of this regulation, and we'll, you know, enforcement will be, of course, given an opportunity to speak on it, and, you know, administration. So on the motion to table, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so this was tabled to July. Fairbanks is nice in July. I don't know if you've ever been there or not, but man. I really want to go.
If you're not willing to go there.
My daughter will let me use her car while I'm there.
The message we used to send out-of-state people, if you're not willing to go to Fairbanks in December and January, you're not welcome in July.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. Okay, denial of license application. Actually, you know what, Director, we'll only get 2 more in here. Are either of these 2 you going to recommend that we hold off on?
No.
Okay, all right, let's whip through them.
Okay. This next one is about denial of license application, and it was basically trying to be more clear about why the board, may deny an application. It's not intending to expand reasonings, but to clarify, particularly based on the experiences that I've had with you in the last 2 years, and why you deny certain applications. So, in 306080, one of the reasons talks about a license violating a restriction of 010, which is where you have the separation distance, but there's nothing about 015, which is where you have both your criminal history, your disqualifying criminal history, and your residency requirements. So that's added in there. There's a change that talks about, the board finding that, the applicant's actions or the operating plan do not adequately demonstrate that the applicant will comply with applicable provisions, reacting to things that, people have done that violate the laws while they are in the application process, and then, putting in that when a local government protests and the board doesn't find that to be arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable, that's a reason for denial. Repealing the section that says the license has been revoked for, any cause, like it won't be renewed if it's been revoked. Well, if it's been revoked, it wouldn't have an application for renewal, so that was weird. Clarifying that another reason for denial of renewal is if the licensee has lost right of possession to its licensed premises. Adding protest under, renewal and transfer. And similar changes for why the board might deny a license conversion. The board did receive one comment on this, project, which is attached, and my recollection is that comment was favorable.
Okay, is there a motion to send this out?
Chair, I would, motion to adopt, the regulations project denial of license applications.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? All those in favor of adopting denial of license application, that would be, amendment to 306080. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, that passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And this brings us to the last regulation, which is handlers courses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this, tries to provide a little bit more sort of sense of what the board expects out of handler permit education courses. So it takes education courses out of 306-700 and makes 306-700 just about the permit itself, and creates a new 306-701 about the permit education course. It includes the same topics that were listed when this section was in 700. It requires that a course provider update the course with any applicable change to 1738, 1737, or the regulations within 10 days of the effective date of the change. And I just wanted to comment that the word applicable is in there because there are some regulatory changes that wouldn't rise to the level of being noted in a training course. And the course provider has to notify the board of a change to an approved course within 3 days of the change. The board will review an approved course at least once every 3 years. That's current language. New language is the course providing continuous access to the course for the board and the director for the purpose of reviewing those course materials at any time, and establishing a fee for a new course and the 3-year review of a course of $500. There were 4 comments on this regulations change that are in your packet, and they're a mixed bag of comments. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just looking at a couple of them there. A little hard to understand the first one about the science, but we're not changing what the content is supposed to be of the course, so. Okay, so we have a motion to adopt handler course.
I'll move to adopt the handler course regulation.
Okay, is there a second? Oh, no, we don't need a second. Okay, any comments? All right, and all those in favor of adopting the handler course regulation, which is the new 701, signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
All right, so that one is adopted.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Unrelated question, but related in my mind anyway. We were just handed this at the meeting, and if you look inside the for those of you who don't, we get a packet that gives all the current regulations. And here's the 2 pages of changes that we've made just in the last probably year and a half. And so the question comes to mind is, if I had a handler card issued to me 2 years ago, and it's gonna be another year before I have to retake the class, whose responsibility is it that I understand those 2 pages? Is it my responsibility as a handler card holder? Is it my employer responsibility? And if I didn't have an employer, and I had this card for 2 years, and I went to a place and said, I'd like to be hired, and here's my card, and they look at that, and, oh, that's 2 years old, you probably don't understand the current regulations. I guess, you know, if we're requiring the educator to update their course every time we make a change, should we look at how do we get that change information out to our 5,000 card holders? I mean, if we made a major change to something a cultivator would do, somehow we would notify the 200 and some cultivators or whatever. If we were gonna make a change that did something, but how do we tell 5,000 card holders that, you know, these particular rules have changed? And I don't expect an answer, but I mean, it's one of those things that in the back of my head, had I thought about it earlier, that might be a regulation project, but maybe it's not. And I don't know how other industries handle that. How does alcohol handle that with the TAMS card? You know, can I be a bartender and have a TAMS card that's 2 years old, and nobody ever asked me if I understood the regulation changes in the last 2 years?
On the alcohol side, you don't even have to retake the course every 3 years. You just have to pass the test, and considering you're allowed to get a certain number of things wrong every time you take the test, you may never learn the new rules. So I think what this board has done is big improvement on that.
All right, thanks. It's just something to think about.
Okay, thanks. Hey, just something else to think about. What time are they kicking us out? 4:30? Never.
I think we left after 5 yesterday, and it was fine.
okay.
I mean, I think
Oh, yeah, the
probably
doors
the
are locked,
doors
yeah.
lock at, probably people can't get back in
Okay.
after 5,
Yeah.
but...
Okay, then go till 5. Sound good? I don't see anybody. Okay. We just passed that. So we are on to applications from previous meetings. License number 10901, High Expedition, transfer of ownership. Director? That's fine, yeah. Everybody catch their breath.
Okay, oops, that's not the right tab. Right. Yep, I just clicked on the wrong thing. Okay, so the board did approve a transfer of controlling interest for this license with delegation at the last meeting, pending all approvals, but the particular issue at the last meeting was a Department of Labor issue. I believe the Department of Labor issue has been resolved, but subsequently the Matanuska-Susitna Borough protested the transfer of this of controlling interest of this license due to debts owed and failure to obtain a flood hazard development permit. Sadly, the regulations change that allows the board to approve conditional protests with delegation is not effective yet. We've got 8 more days. So my recommendation has to be that you uphold the protest and deny the transfer with an abeyance period, to which I think you would want to discuss with the licensee.
Okay, Ms. Wiltsine.
Janet Waltzine, attorney for High Expedition, and the licensee, Joe, is on the phone. He's updated me that he has turned in the flood plan application, and that just seemed to be something that didn't get caught when the initial build-out of the facility, because it seems like it should have gotten caught before. So that got fixed. He is down to about $17K on his tax borough bill and is on a current payment plan. And I didn't see that, though, in the borough's notes, so I'm happy to provide follow-up information if the director needs me to. And so, Joe, you're on the phone, correct? Oops, sorry.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Yeah, this is Joe.
Hi, Joe. How many months do you think you need to kind of get all the way caught up so you feel that comfortable that the borough will release its program?
Yeah, so I'm on a payment plan with them, and it's slated to be done in the next 30 days and be all caught up and current.
So can we request 60 days of abeyance time just to give them a little wiggle room and let the summer kind of heat up the tourism season there?
Chair, I would move that the board reconsider its February approval, uphold the protest, and deny the transfer within a period of 60 days.
Okay, very good. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Say aye, Mr. Jones. Okay, all right. Okay, 2 days.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe.
You're very welcome.
Thanks.
Okay, license 11721, Alaska Snowburn. Nobody's got that name yet. Alaska Snowburn.
Jana Waldstein, I'm sorry, I'll let the director go first.
Thank you. The board upheld the municipality of Anchorage's protest of this new license application with a 120-day ban at the last meeting. Due to issues with local rules, the licensee is concerned that he will not meet the abeyance deadline and requests an extension to September 1st of 2019.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
If you may or may not recall, originally we noticed the wrong community council because this particular location sits on the border of two community councils. So he's already presented to the real community council, which is the one that we had to renotice. But as a courtesy, we'd also like to go and present to the Tudor area community council. They didn't have time for him in April, so he's on the May agenda to present to them. And so we're just not going to make the deadline.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering whether you were talking about skateboarders or snowboarders or...
Did I?
You spelled...
Oh, I'm sorry. Snowburn. Oh, so you look at it.
All right.
Great branding.
Yeah, no, that's we all know what a delight it is to work with the municipality on things. Ah, they're good. Okay, so he would like till September.
September 1st, 2019.
Okay, is there a motion to extend abeyance to September 1st, 2019?
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to make the motion. I may vote for it, but I have an issue, and I realize we're meeting, so we need to be, and the applicant wants to be proactive. But this is the 1st of May, so they're basically asking for a 4-month extension. And maybe I don't understand totally how Anchorage does it, but if it's just simply waiting for a meeting with the council in May and then the assembly moves forward, or if the assembly doesn't do anything until all that's done, and so therefore their process is 4 months. I mean, it just seems that we gave 120 days, and now we're basically adding from today, almost another 120 days, 4 months. Anyway, that just, it seems, I know from June 29th to, that's only 2 more months, but still, that...
So, Mr. Jones, if I could,
just seems like an awful lot of...
through the chair, Mr. Jones, and I appreciate that concern. So how the municipality works is they don't calendar the special land use permit application until they get it complete, and they deem it complete special land use permit application, and that includes a section called the Community Engagement Report. So while we have the memorandum of understanding from the actual community council that this location sits, it's important that we also include the Community Engagement Report from the other community council that borders it, even though it's not required. And then once they deem it complete, it's scheduled 75 days out from that complete date. So that's why.
And through the chair, Mr. Jones, I would also point out that the board's adopted a regulations project that will allow these issues to be done through delegation. And I don't bring delegated applications or licenses that remain in delegated status back to you until they've been in delegated status for a year. So, and my perception of what the board has looked at when you're talking to applicants / licensees who have been in some sort of status where is progress, is moving forward, are they actually taking steps? So I don't think 6 months is out of character with what has happened with many other applications.
All right, we have a motion then?
I would make a motion to extend the abeyance out to, is it August 1st?
September 1st.
September 1st, 2019.
Okay. Any more discussion? Okay, then all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, that passes. You got till September, 1st.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, brings us to license number 13949, Gas Station 49.
Mr. Chair, on April 29th, we were notified that the licensee is compliant with Department of Labor Employment Security, and their objection was removed, so there's nothing standing in the way of this transfer application.
Well, and based on that, is there a motion to approve the and the transfer is okay? This is the story you got from the guy that died, right? Yeah. Oh, okay, yeah. You're right. It's the one on airport. Yep. Okay. Yep. All right. Pardon me. Okay. So
there's nothing for us to do. This is recommend continue the delegation. And did we rescind the delegation?
Oh yeah.
If this is just allowed to continue, if we don't take any action at all, then the delegation is continued. Is that correct, Rick?
My apology, I hadn't looked at my memo. I had just made a note that the objection was removed. That's correct. So it doesn't need to be brought back before the board because the objection was removed.
Okay, first rate.
Okay.
Then we'll move on to that. What? I told you, everybody's gonna get what they want, or nobody's getting nothing. Okay, Aurora Borealis Cannabis, license 15768. This is a license application, right?
Yes, so the board approved, this was a new license application that you approved with delegation at the last meeting. Subsequently, we received a protest from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough because of debts and taxes owed, so that I recommend the board reconsider its approval, uphold the protest, and deny the license. The Alcohol Board has established a policy where they give 30 days to resolve taxes issues. That's why there's 30 days in here. You guys can decide how you want to address taxes issues.
$30-day abeyance.
And I don't mean to minimize, $2,300, but that's in some of the things we've seen. That's a pretty low amount considering some of the other things we've seen.
Is anybody here from Aurora Borealis?
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Jeff Thompson, Aurora Borealis. Somebody close the window and turn their phone off, please. Sharon Thompson? Oh, well. Okay, that's all right.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Okay, so is there a motion to, if we reconsider the approval, we gotta vote on the approval, right?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
I would move that the board reconsider its February approval, uphold the protest from the Matanuska-Susitna Borough, and deny the license with a 30-day abeyance period. And I would like to make that a 90-day abeyance period, at least give staff a chance to contact the applicant who's not here. So I would make that a 90-day abeyance.
All right, that sounds
Because
reasonable.
usually we don't act on things, and so we should extend this out some. If somebody doesn't show up, we usually don't act.
And I would also let you know that we calculate the abeyance period from the date that they get a formal letter. So we make it a priority, usually the Monday and Tuesday after the board meeting, to send out all the abeyance letters, but we calculate the period as starting from the date of that letter, not actually the date of the board's action.
Okay. But I think I still stick with my 90 days.
Okay. Then, on the motion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes.
And I have a question related to this.
Sure.
And a couple of these other tax, and maybe Jeff knows how to deal with this, but we had this discussion on an alcohol licensee in Juneau 2 weeks ago, or a week ago. We generally, as a municipality, will allow somebody to go on a payment plan if it's sales taxes. But there are state laws on property taxes. And usually the way in which our attorneys have ruled on property taxes is you have other avenues that are allowed by state law in terms of foreclosure on properties if they fail to pay property tax. We would never put a person on a payment plan for property taxes. And so we would never waive a protest until it's paid in full, or we had implemented the foreclosure process. And I see some of this as a mixture of both property and sales tax that gets owed. And I don't know how we or you would know what a local municipality's rules are related to how they go about collecting taxes in arrears, sales versus property. But I just wanted to know how Juneau views it. And because I know on Monday we lifted the protest, you guys decided it on Monday or Tuesday because they came in and paid all of their property tax. Because we as the assembly would not allow that to be on a payment plan because we weren't sure under the foreclosure rules we had the right to do that. And maybe local government specialists could let us know how we might determine what the rules might be in other municipalities that have both, because I see this on both, and sometimes we, as a municipality, will not protest a sales tax in arrears if they're current with a payment plan. So they may owe us $10,000 in taxes, but if they're paying us $1,000 a month and we agreed to that, we wouldn't protest because they are on a payment plan. So it's just something I noticed, a little pattern here, so.
To the Chair, Mr. Jones, I would view that as really the purview of the local government, and that they get to decide their own policies regarding what they're going to protest, when, why, and when they may choose to lift the protest. I suppose the board could institute a discussion about a protest being considered arbitrary, capricious, and unreasonable, but for taxes owed, that seems to me not really a good fit.
But if our regulations are going to change in 9 days and this becomes a delegated, right? How long would you keep it in a delegated status?
I see.
If, in fact, the municipality was waiting for the 18-month or 2-year period in arrears before they could go into foreclosure, we really put a licensee out there a ways.
Well, and I think for a new license, really, it could go on, it would get brought back in a year, hey, they're still in delegated status.
Okay.
Why? I haven't paid off my taxes. But I think for a transfer or a renewal, that's a really good point, and we should put some thought into that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't want to delay us too long, but that's just something that we just struggled with our accountants down there and our attorney, is that could we put a property tax on a payment plan, and basically we determined we couldn't, so.
Okay, that brings us to license 15814, Tanana Herb Company. And we got 2 of them here. They the same thing, basically?
No, sir. One's for the manufacturing.
Right, but it's for the same reason, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, so, Director, any, comments on, we'll just take these one after the other, bin ban.
No.
So basically, you roughed in on both of them?
Yes, sir, actually, I have, my rough-in permits here. Our plumbing final should be today, depending on, scheduling with the city, and everything else should be.
So you just want,
I'm sorry, can you identify yourself?
Sure, I'm Sam Hatchie, I'm from Fairbanks, and I'm representative of Taylor Herb Company. My license holder's on the phone, if you need her.
yeah, let's go ahead and turn the phone on.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Herb Company.
Yeah, this is Leslie Nunley, I'm here.
Hi, good afternoon, okay. So, you just want, extend the abeyance to,
Yeah, we've...
Might be one floor to extend abeyance to 2nd, 2019.
Yes, we need a little bit more time to get finished up. We've been working diligently towards that, and the city building department's been very helpful. We're close, but we're not quite there.
Okay, very good. Well, we're gonna vote on the retail here, so.
Motion to give a 2-day extension to the advance to June 22nd, 2019.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Motion by saying aye. 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 Okay, and on license 16091, basically same motion. Okay, all those in favor of, extending abeyance to June 22nd, 2019 for 16091, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. Oh, good.
Hey, thanks.
You bet.
Thank you.
Okay, Bristol Bay Bud Company.
Hi, this is Jason Brandeis. I'm the attorney for Bristol Bay Bud Company.
Oh, okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Brandeis. Let's get the tab there. Director, I'm here for you.
Nothing other than what I have written.
All right. Okay,
number 27. Maybe six. They're going pretty fast.
Okay, Mr. Brandeis?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Phone, but you're not. Mr. Brandeis, you want to mute your phone, please? Please. There, that sounds much quieter. Okay, Mr. Brandeis.
I'm still here.
Okay, all right. So you're still waiting on conditional use permit and business license?
Yeah, so this licensee, one of the licensees had sort of a very serious, unexpected emergency health situation, so that slowed down the process of applying for the conditional use permit. The Matsuboro business license, I believe they're taking care of that this week, but essentially things just got slowed down, so they have not yet been able to complete the conditional use permit application.
Okay, so how much time do you need?
Well, I think they'll be able to get that taken care of probably within the next 2 months.
Okay, so say 90 days. Yeah, you're man yourself, man. Okay, well, 90 days sound okay to you?
I think 90 days is probably okay. 120 would probably be better, but we can I guess, come back if there's something slows us down with the borough, because we're just not sure how long it's going to take them to process things.
Let's just get a motion to give you 120 days.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I would recommend that the board reconsider its February approval on Bristol Bay Bud Company License 17452, uphold the protest and deny the license with an abeyance period of 120 days.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of 120-day abeyance period for license 17452, upholding protest and denying the license for Bristol Bay Bud Company, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, there you go, sir.
Thank you.
You bet. Okay, that brings us to hire by Bad Gram 3R. Okay, so, February, the board approved the license with delegation, then the borough protested it. So the recommendation is to reconsider February approval of the turn that off.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
So it says, proposed location was close to a youth gymnastics studio, AMCO went out measuring tape. More than 500 feet, so you recommend that we reconsider? Okay?
The applicant on the phone?
Yeah, let's see, let's get back on there.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, hired by bad grammar, are you out there? Hello? Hired by bad grammar, tab 28. All right, let's we're done.
Okay. And I'd like the board to know that we do, contact them and tell them that their license is gonna be on the agenda for consideration, so.
I heard in the background somebody said, tab 27, wow, they're going fast, so. Okay, we'll get back to hire by bad grammar, just so we get an idea of how much time we need. Okay, to take up the rest of our afternoon.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Okay, we're moving on to, tabled items, and this would be tab 29, good titrations.
I'm on the board.
Of the
and
AMIA?
Typically, we recuse ourselves, but I will leave it up to...
You're not a, it's not an AMIA application, AMIA's got nothing to do with it, you guys are just on the same board. So I do not, the chair does not find any reason for recusal.
I promise not to give Nick any discounts on cookies.
That's good, he doesn't need
that
any more
would be
he doesn't
accurate.
need any more cookies. Okay, so, thanks to the hard work of the director, we've got a nice little sheet here of, so you've got 5 items?
Yeah.
Gummies?
Brandon Emmett,
Gummies?
licensee, FSC Incorporated.
Jan Welty, attorney for FSE Inc.
Okay. All right. Why did we table these? Just ran out of time last time?
Yeah, you asked, all the manufacturers
that's right,
that picked
that's
top 10.
Okay, so,
Mr. Chair?
yes, sir.
The only comment I had on this, is the first item, the bomb, the bath bomb, can of bath bomb. I think we have requested on, other applicants when they have a product that should not be consumed or edible or something, that we ask them on the labeling, since we were talking about labeling and packaging, that it be identified as not for consumption or not edible or something like that. I did not see that on this sample, so I would just bring that up as part of the approval process, that would certainly need to be done. And I guess I would, so we have a discussion, I would move that we approve the 5 products for good titrations with delegation, and one of those delegations being that the label on the bomb includes some words related to not edible, not for consumption.
Good. What are you packaging? These will be in a bag, okay, but they, one, single use, okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, these will be in standard Mylar packaging.
Okay, very good. What are these gummies? These are just squares, huh?
They are circles.
Oh, yeah.
Our process that we have detailed here is a handmade process. If we can afford the machinery, we will upgrade to squares. But currently, yeah, they're circles.
Okay, and you're getting moved into your new plant. This expansion? Yeah.
No.
Oh.
No.
We have not seen an operating change come through, so let's hope he has not.
Yeah, well, there you go. That's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, for clarification, so we're not gonna be
making these products in the current space. We're gonna get an additional space hopefully approved, and that'll be a food manufacturing space. That's why we pulled these from the last meeting, because we wouldn't be ready for them.
You'll be ready to go as soon as you get into that new space and it gets approved.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha, all right. So we got a motion to approve all 5, items here for good titrations. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the approval, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you, Board, and thank you, Director, for collating this.
Was that all the products? Okay, great,
That's it,
thank
all
you.
5, yes. Mhm. Okay, brings us to, Anchorage Bowl, license 12318. Anchorage. Okay, all right, that's fine. We can, we'll just, yeah, yeah. You know what, really 2 minutes? Seriously. All right, then we'll wait for him to get here. Yeah, okay, we'll take 10.
Welcome to the GCI Conference Center. Please enter your... Thank you. Please stand by. You are being placed into conference in listen-only mode. There are 24 participants in the conference.
Meeting, not from the last meeting.
Okay.
There were, I
All
believe, amendments required to some of the products.
Okay, yep, all right, so this is a operating,
Are they operating?
tab 30, well, operating plan changes, it says here. What,
No, these were products that were submitted with the new application that was considered in December. And, this was a gentleman where there was gonna be, that you had said we'll have a special meeting for these products, but they weren't submitted until after the deadline for the February meeting, and then they weren't deemed complete for a while, so it just ended up waiting out.
all right, so we've got, 12 products here, you got one topical, one drink. Tell us about the drink real quick.
So the drink is just a, that's the,
THC-RTD.
Right. What can I tell you about it?
Okay, so this is just, you're taking the coconut oil and
Yes.
mixing it up with, cane sugar, vegetable glycerin, water. Okay, does anybody have any questions about any of his, products here?
Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead.
One, similar to, the last applicant, the can of bombs should have some kind of label on there, not for consumption, that I'm not sure I saw on the label. And then the other one that I had some real issues with, given some of the popular, or I guess unpopular press that I've been reading, the doggy nips. I assume that's for human consumption, but it looks like a doggy bone. And I know there's a lot of issues about cannabis and CBD oil for pets. And I know that in a lot of the literature there appears to be some issues around the formulation of that. We don't regulate that, but I'm not sure that I would approve something that would look familiar, or people would normally consume for, or use for an animal to consume. So, the product could be the same, change the shape, I don't know, but I'm not sure that I'm willing to go for that particular product.
So that particular product, we do have it labeled for, not for animals, for human consumption only.
I must have missed that.
Small print. Oh, there we go, yeah. 5 milligrams THC, total estimated THC 10 milligrams for humans only. Why do you put that on the front too?
Got it.
Yeah, because, that concern is exactly right. There is a board of veterinary in this state, and, we certainly don't want to get them mad at us, 'cause they'll, how's the song go, let the dogs out?
Yeah, we don't have a problem with that.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, so we got a motion on, these candies look pretty innocuous, right? You've heard our discussion about candy in the past, I'm sure.
Yes, I have.
And, okay. All right, so there a motion for, Anchorage Bowl products?
Motion to approve Anchorage Bowl products 1 through 12 with delegation, and that delegation was to put not for consumption on the bomb and to add not for human consumption on...
For human consumption only.
Only on, the doggy nets.
Yep.
And that's on the front.
put that on the front also, yeah, yeah, okay. Any other discussion about the products? Okay, then all those in favor of, tab 30, Anchorage Bowl LLC, products 1 through 12, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Okay, there's 3 no, you got it, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, now, Rosy Creek.
Anna Waltzine, attorney for Rosy Creek Farms. The licensee just picked up his kids from school, and he doesn't want to talk about this stuff while they're in the car. And also, he has no problem doing these products in person in July, if it would be agreeable to the board to table the products to July.
I think that'd be agreeable. Anybody disagree with that? Okay, then, Rosy Creek products are tabled till July.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's bring it up to Tip Top.
Mr. Chair, this applicant was on the agenda for the last meeting but was not present, so the board tabled
Right.
it to this meeting.
Okay, is Tip Top here today? Not seeing anything. We'll see if they're on the phone, I guess.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Number 32.
Top, you out there?
I'm number 49, so if they get close, I'm just gonna walk out to my car because I want to be quiet.
Okay, well, we're on number 32 right now, is, Tip Top LLC, application for retail store. Are you on the line with us?
Hey, did somebody
Okay.
respond regarding tab 30 earlier?
Tab 30? Yeah, tab 30 is taken care of.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
All right, go ahead and turn the phone off.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Phone back on.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
I guess before we move on, do we need a motion to move Tip Top to July?
Oftentimes you'll
They show up.
check.
Yeah,
Maybe they,
we'll look for them. Yeah, we'll look for them, yeah. Okay, all right, folks, this is the Marijuana Control Board. We are looking for applicants that are online, so please mute your telephones. Stony Moose Kitchens, are you out there? Ketchikan? That would be tab 33 for some products. Okay, all right, then he'll be here tomorrow, I guess. Okay, that's fine. Okay, we'll pick him up.
Thank you.
Okay, State of Mind Cannabis. Okay, is State of Mind Cannabis and Seward, are you online?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Director? Anything on this one?
Mr. Chair, it was noted when this application first came to the board that they had a liquor license premises at this location. They were required to amend their liquor license premises to show it as different from its marijuana premises. They have done that. The board has not done a review of this record on the application, and the license premises diagrams for both liquor licenses are also included attached to my cover memo for the board's, just for your information.
Okay, very good, thank you. Okay, let me find, okay, Mr. Heddick?
Yeah, this is David Heddick, owner.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and, give us the rundown on, you've been before us before. We haven't gone over the application, as I said, for the record, so go ahead and, tell us who you are and what you want to do there.
Basically doing up a store there on my property. Basically, we're about ready to go, just waiting for approval. Still there?
Okay, yeah, oh no, we're here.
Okay, okay.
It's amazingly quiet, thank you, everybody. Okay, so, what part of Seward are you in?
We're outside the city of limits. We're in the Bear Lake area, Woodrow subdivision.
you're a businessman, I'm taking it.
Yep.
Anybody got any questions on the application? I think we have looked at it.
Mr. Chair, I kept looking for this and I didn't find my notes from December, but I'm assuming that the issue I raised about the, where they were in terms of their liquor premises has all been cleared up. And I assume we wouldn't get this if either the ABC board and or the marijuana staff felt that this was too close or there wasn't the appropriate separation or whatever it is we think we require. So, was this before the ABC board, the premises changes in the last couple of days or not?
Through the chair, Mr. Jones, no. Premises diagram changes for liquor license premises do not go to the board. They are approved administratively. There is no required separation between the liquor license premises and a marijuana premises. They just can't overlap. So if you look at the second page right after the memo, you'll see that the bar area is surrounded in red. The package store area is surrounded in green, and the marijuana store is to the left of the bar area where it says State of Mind Cannabis Company. So these are all right next to each other.
And so the diagram behind the memo different from the application premises diagram.
This is the diagram that was submitted for the liquor license premises change. So it was not submitted for the marijuana license. So if you look at the MJ02 on the marijuana premises diagram, you'll see on page 3 of that tab of the MJ02 sort of chapter, you'll see page 3 has kind of a close-up of that portion of the building, and then page 4 you can see outlined in red is where the marijuana license premises is proposed, and just to the right is the bar, and above on the page where it says Lost Lake Market Liquor is the package store. And those are consistent with the liquor premises diagram that was behind the memo.
Okay. And then I guess the question to the applicant in terms of this, is this all within inside a building? And is there a separate outside entrance to the marijuana retail store where you don't have to go into the building or
the main entrance is on the south end of the building. It's all its own entrance.
The entrance to main entrance is on the south end, so basically
to the marijuana plant.
You have to walk past the liquor area and...
No, you're outside. Comes from outside, south side. Or excuse me, it would be the north side. I'm sorry.
Looking at your O2 and your south is...
Yeah, okay, my fault. I should have been the north side. That was my fault. South side is employee only. North side is the main entrance. Okay. I got my directions backwards, sorry.
Well, I'm directionally challenged, so I looked at your map and I was looking in the direction of what you put on there.
I don't have my map with me, so I'm sorry.
Okay, so legal possession, retail. So how do you get into the bar? Do you go into the bar through the retail store, or do you get into the bar through the
Through the
RV
main-
check-in area.
To the RV check-in area. They don't have to have a special. The only one that had to be was the liquor store, and it's got an entrance on the south side to come in, and it's got its own doorway for the liquor store. It's got to have its own doorway, which is required.
Okay, I gotta say, I don't think architects are making enough money in this business. I'm just saying that because it's kind of hard to understand your drawings here, sir. That's all. And we really, we need good, accurate drawings for us old men to be able to understand them. Okay, so there's no communication between the bar or the liquor store and the retail except through the single door that opens to the outdoors from the retail. Is that correct?
Correct. Other than there is a employee-only door on the inside.
Yeah, that goes back into this.
Goes back towards the hallway.
Prizes. Yeah.
So that way you got a bathroom and stuff for it.
Right. Okay. And this future grow, that's the second floor of this building?
Is what our future hope is, yes.
Okay, and is the retail going to be running approximately the same operating hours as the bar?
Probably shorter.
Okay. And what are your liquor store hours?
Right now we're only open usually when we're open it's till 10 at night.
All right.
We kind of live in a residential area to a point, so we like to be neighborly. We could be open till 5, but we're not.
Yeah, okay. And you're mostly trade from the RV park?
Mostly the RV park, yep. Yep.
Okay. Any other questions on the application? Okay, we got a motion to approve license. State of mind.
Motion to approve, state of mind, license number 1717.
With delegation.
With delegation.
Okay, any additional
Mr.
discussion?
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I think this also has Kenai Peninsula Borough conditions, which it doesn't look like we noted on the agenda, but it is in the Kenai Peninsula Borough. Board memo says approved with conditions.
Okay, we'll add that to the motion. So the motion is to approve license 17176, State of Mind Cannabis Retail Marijuana Store in Seward with delegation and Kenai Peninsula Borough conditions. So all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye?
Aye.
All right, there you go.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, latitude 61.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
Okay, this is license number 18173, Product Manufacturing. All right, so this is, we tabled this application. Okay. Okay, Director, you wanna go over any of this with us?
Mr. Chair, you had a lot of questions regarding this application at the February meeting, and I thought it would be more helpful to provide you with the minutes than for me to try to summarize them.
Right,
So
thank you.
that's what's on the memo.
Gee, somebody did a good job of the minutes. All right, so, yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the issue of the objections think we went over this in some detail at the last meeting, didn't we?
No, sir, we never got to the objections.
We did not. All right. Okay.
But I'm ready to deal with them now.
Okay, well, give us a second here to take a quick look at them. Okay, well, I think we talked about the covenants, didn't we? The fact that there's really, weren't you the one that said, like, there's a bunch of small businesses in the subdivision?
Yes, sir, there are a bunch of small businesses in the subdivision.
Yeah.
I provided, some documentation where we had been to the board, had our annual meetings. The board has actually approved, my business as, on attachment 2. Attachment 1 shows where I went to the complete, homeowners association, told them what I was gonna do. Then the board, a couple of months later, reviewed it, and said I was in compliance with the directions. Then we had another meeting of the whole homeowners owners, all 50 of us got together in March. And, once again, I went over what I was doing, and I also clarified some of their misconceptions about medical and recreational use. They got Marijuana 101. It went well. Not only did I get elected to the board, I'm now the president of the board. So I can able to speak that there is not a problem with my homeowners association.
All right. Okay, no, that's fine. The other issues we had here were, had some questions about, bundling products, and testing, and I think we had, some discussion about waste disposal as well.
Okay, the bundling of the products, the director and I have worked out. Staff got back to me and said that, she was okay with the bundling of the products, so all that was done with. Testing and the procedures were also addressed. When I resubmitted that portion of, my application, I just changed the process of making one oil before the other oil, and subsequently it's already gone through, the reviewers. So that change has also been made.
Mr. Chair, if I could speak to the bundling of the products, each product needs to be approved individually, and then if the applicant wishes to bundle them in her sales to retail stores, as long as it doesn't exceed, well, and then it's really the retail's responsibility to make sure that I think the purchase limits still apply.
Really?
The product, the limits on the product themselves don't apply, but I think the per day purchase limits still apply.
Oh, per day purchase limit. Yeah,
Yes.
I was talking about THC percentage.
Yeah, no, I'm not talking about that.
Okay, right.
So, to me, bundling is a marketing issue that the licensee is welcome
Yeah, so
to
you make up gift
negotiate
baskets
with
and stuff.
her,
Yeah, sure, okay.
with her
Right.
partners.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Okay, so you're gonna be buying your cannabis for manufacturing on the commercial market. I mean, obviously. I mean, you're not cultivating.
No, sir, I'm not a grow.
Yeah, okay, right. Okay, so we've got, we got two things here. We got all right, right, does anybody have any other questions on, the application of Alaska's Latitude 61, including anything about any of the products?
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I had a couple of questions related to, the licensed premises is in the basement of the home. Is that what I'm understanding from the premises
Yes, sir. It's a
diagram?
daylight basement that has its own access, separate from the residence upstairs. It's the whole downstairs.
The whole downstairs,
Mm-hmm.
okay. So the licensed premise is the entire downstairs, and there's some restricted, some not restricted access areas? Or is it only the part that's in orange? At least on my document.
It would be the part in orange. There is
You have a bathroom, office, storage bedroom not restricted, and then you have a restricted access.
right, that's the single entrance that comes into the daylight basement downstairs, and so all that whole area downstairs is designated for the facility. I took what used to be the little office and made it into a secure room, and then what used to be the little bedroom, it's just, I've got a desk in there, and it's just kind of an office. In what used to be like the little living room, it's all bookcases and stuff, that's just storage. I've got my bottles and my stuff on it, you know, and there's a TV and a chair in there so that you can actually sit in that room while things are cooking. It's a very small daylight basement, and there's only one way in and one way out if you don't climb through a window.
I find it interesting that your only entrance is immediately into the restricted access area, and all of the non-restricted access areas can only be gotten to by going through the restricted access. That concerns me a little bit. I was more concerned, and that's helpful clarification. I guess the other issue was, you had, 35 projects, 40, and they were all formula names, and I think you're down to 6 now.
Right, we reduced them down
And
to...
they're still formula names? There's not a...
Well, they're a formula and a name, like the ointment I refer to as 3B because that is its formula name. You have the liniment, which is its formula name to me is BC2. So they're listed as both, liniment and BC2. But there are just basically the 6 formulas, 6 topicals that I'm going to be putting in production. I originally, when I put this application in last July, we were unsure about how the THC was going to work out because I was working with my testing facility at that time. So I put in for all different variables of the THC as we were going through the finite testing. But we've got it down to where it's consistent and exactly where I want it. So I was able to pull back all those other products. I don't need them. This was mostly just a CYA. But there's 6 products.
Okay, well, do we have a motion on the products? Questions on the products?
No.
Well,
Well, I guess, taking to heart the conversation we had with James today and looking at packaging, I see in the MJ05, well, I'll just pick one here, the Formula 3B ointment. If you read the packaging label, that's what it says. Latitude 61 presents Formula 3B ointment. If you look at what the director has, she goes, it's 3B. If you look under the product name on the sheet, it's 3B. But she just testified she has both names. So I just want to be clear that 3B's a fine name if that's the only one you use, and that's the one we always refer to, and that's how enforcement would refer to it. But, to me, the description and asking questions, I hear different answers. I won't say the applicant gave me different answers, I hear different answers. So, I just want to be clear that we're approving the product name, and that product name is what is in that box on the form that says product name, not necessarily, what's on the labels or labels. So, and I do appreciate that most of these labels do say "do not eat." I don't have to bring that up, but I think this is a better application with just the 6. I'm still sort of concerned about the premises, but I'm not going to vote no at this point.
Okay, I mean, formula FC11 will never be anything but a salve, will it? Okay, then I think that really the product name should be FC11 salve, 3B ointment. Because, again, your product names are a matter of record. They're going to be listed along with photographs on the spreadsheet of all the manufactured products that we license. So we want people to be able to look at this, and we don't want you to have to say, well, I changed the FC11 to massage oil, and 4S is the massage oil. So I think when we get to the motion, there'd be some delegation that the product name should formally include its useful description. It'd be 3B ointment, FC8 salve, FC11 salve, 4S massage oil. It'll be easier for everybody all the way around.
Right, on the sample label on the front, it says Formula 3B ointment.
Mm-hmm.
It says Formula 4S massage oil.
Right.
So I tried to clarify it that way so that there wouldn't be any discrepancy on that.
No, that's fine, but I think that from the sounds of things, other board members would be more comfortable if those descriptors were part of the product name.
Just put it in the box, that first box, just add.
So AHS
Okay.
bomb.
All right, so you want like 3B ointment and then product type ointment?
No, topical is
Something like
fine.
that?
Topical. But
Okay.
product name, it'll be 3B ointment.
Absolutely.
FC8 salve, and people will say, "Oh, I want some more 3B," but because they use for ointment. So that'll be part of the delegation. Okay, so we need 2 motions here. We need a motion to approve the license.
Motion to approve license Alaska's Latitude 61, license number 18173.
Oh, you know what? Okay, all right, thank you. Can we turn the phone on?
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, and this is the Marijuana Control Board. Is there anybody that would like to address the license application of Vicki Fenster for Alaska's Latitude 61, 2201 Nissen Drive in Palmer? Not hearing it.
The conference is now in listen-only mode.
All right. Okay, so the motion to approve the license application. All those in favor of approving the license application 18173, Alaska Latitude 61 Marijuana Product Manufacturing Facility, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we need a motion to approve the, the products with delegation.
Motion to approve products 1 through 6 with delegation to clarify the name of each of those products with not only the formula number, but also the use or name. If it's topical, put topical. If it's a salve, put salve.
Okay, great. Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve the 6 products with delegation, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, there you go.
Yahoo!
All right. Time we started at 4:20, and actually started at 4:18, but. Okay, so 4:35. What do we got next here? Red Run Cannabis. Is Red Run Cannabis here? Red Run Cannabis Cultivators. Okay, let's see if they're on the phone.
The conference is no longer in listen-only mode.
Okay, Red Run Cannabis Cultivators, you out there, Don Kenai? Oops, okay, we don't hear Red Run Cannabis Cultivators. If anybody's talking to them, tell them we'll pick them up on the rebound. All right, okay, let's jump to, licenses and pending. Oh, yeah, who are we circling back on? Tip Top, Tony Moose. Okay, Tip Top, are you out there? I have a bad grammar, okay. Previous page are they on? Tab, well, oh, there we go. Yeah, okay, hired by bad grammar, are you online? Tab 28. We'll sign to them, Stony Moose and Ketchikan. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, yeah, that's right, okay. All right, okay, let's just quickly see if, Tempt LLC, Cloudberry Cannabis, Cloudberry Partners, are you out there? Any of you? Joe Lily Schmick? Or Tempt LLC? Okay, no show for Tempt LLC again.
Given people may have given up on it.
Yeah, that's true,
it may
that's
be
pretty
time
quiet
for
there,
us to
yeah.
Try it tomorrow.
Yeah, you know what do you guys think about adjourning? Because we're up to
Or recessing.
delegations, recessing, yeah, let's just come back in the morning, 9 o'clock. Enjoy the sunshine. We're not too horribly off schedule.
I feel like we're ahead of schedule.
That's a good feeling to have. That's a good feeling to have.
It won't last.
Yeah, probably not, you know. I'm not sure. I've got to get a hold of somebody and have a meeting today. Maybe tomorrow.
You guys,
you know.
I said I'd take you guys to eat dinner.
Yes, you can take us up to dinner. Yeah.
If you want, I could drive you guys over there. I'll go out there.
The chairperson has disconnected. The conference will now end.